Hey everyone, mystery lovers of the M channel. Have you still been having trouble sleeping lately? I'm here to share some eerie, mysterious, real-life experiences that might just help you sleep a little better. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Thank you so much for always supporting the channel. And by the way, we really appreciate all of you who've been sending in your own mysterious experiences. Don't hold back, keep them coming. Wishing you a great night's sleep. And now, let's get started. So, I live in this apartment complex that was built back in the early 60s, and I've been here a little over a year and a half now. It has that old building vibe, you know? Not creepy exactly, just seasoned. And every once in a while, really once in a while, when I'd be half asleep, barely even conscious, I'd feel something brush my foot. Just the faintest little touch. Sometimes I'd even dream about my old dog Milo, who passed a few years ago, and I'd wake up with that strange, sweet feeling like an animal had curled up near my feet. Always super brief, always spaced out by weeks, even months. I'd notice it, go, huh, and then life would move on. But then, one night changed the whole rhythm of it. It was the Thursday after Thanksgiving. My dad had driven me home from my parents' place. Nothing dramatic, just a couple drinks, and honestly, the kind of amount that used to mean something in my 20s but barely makes a dent now. By the time I got into bed, I was sleepy, calm, totally fine. I remember lying there with my phone in my hand, about to text someone back, and I started drifting off. And suddenly, whoosh. Like this tickly sweep of air skimmed across my face, almost like something dashed by, close enough that I felt it. And right after that, that familiar sensation landed at my feet again. Except this time it didn't vanish. In my mind, like instantly, in my gut, I just knew. That's a cat. And before you ask, yes, I wondered if I was imagining it. But if there was any leftover fuzziness from the earlier evening, it was gone right then. I was awake. I was sober. I was very much present. I'm lying on my back, staring at the ceiling, and then I feel this odd pressure on my stomach. Not painful, just there. Like the gentle indent of weight, and even this faint warmth, like a cat had settled on me. Except there was nothing to see. And then, oh my God, this motion starts. That unmistakable kneading. You know when cats make biscuits? That back and forth tiny paw motion. It felt exactly like that. Two little paws, pressing, alternating, like they were getting comfy or claiming the spot. Except, again, nothing was visible. And that's the part where my brain officially started to spiral. Because I tried to stay calm, but the more I thought, okay, it's a cat, the more another part of my mind went, or it's not a cat, and you're inviting something weird to knead your organs. I got so freaked out I couldn't sleep. I finally gave up and moved to the couch in the living room thinking, okay, new location, new vibe, problem solved. Nope. It followed me. I barely slept at all, and the next day I was exhausted. At some point in the afternoon, I ended up lying down again, just trying to catch up, and it happened again. Same thing. I'm on my back, and there's that pressure, that warmth, and then the tickling sensation creeps up my legs and drifts toward my face, like whatever it is inching closer, like it has a body, like it's curious, like it's checking me out. And I know this is going to sound strange, but mixed in with the fear, there's this other feeling too. Like affection. Like I'm being watched over, almost protected. It's not menacing. It feels loving. Familiar even. And here's the wild part. It started happening all the time. Every day. Every time I lie back down, bed or couch, it shows up like clockwork. And now there's no question of alcohol or sleepiness or anything like that. I'm fully sober. fully awake, and it still happens. So at this point, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, if it is a cat, maybe two, honestly, because sometimes it feels wide, like there's more than one set of paws, then they are suddenly extremely active. Like they've decided, ah yes, this one. This is our person. Which is funny because I've always wanted a cat. And then my mom comes over. My mom's name is Denise, and she's the kind of person who doesn't roll her eyes at this stuff. She and I are both kind of, let's just say we're open-minded. We're paranormal fans. So she comes by, partly to visit, partly to see if I'm losing it. We literally crawl into bed together like we're kids at a sleepover, get under the covers, and start giggling because the whole thing is absurd. And I'm telling her, just wait. If it's going to happen, it happens pretty fast once you settle in. And we're lying there, quieting down, and I'm half holding my breath like, please let this happen so I'm not alone in this. A few moments pass, and then Denise goes, very calmly, oh, I feel it. I swear I could have cried with relief. I was like, what do you feel? And she goes, a warmth, and like a little weight. Just like that. No fear, no drama, just matter-of-fact confirmation. And I cannot even tell you how validated I felt in that moment. Because whatever this is, whether it's ghost cats, residual energy, some weird old building phenomenon, or something my brain can't properly label, it wasn't just me. And honestly, I don't even know what I want the ending to be. Part of me is still startled every time it happens. Part of me wishes they'd just curl up quietly and take a nap like normal cats. But another part of me, this soft, secret part, feels kind of lucky. Like somewhere in this old building, something decided I needed a little company. Okay, so I'm going to tell you this the way it actually felt, because I've tried to talk myself out of it for years, and I can't. For most of my life, I was the kind of person who rolled their eyes at paranormal stuff. Like, sure, spooky stories are fun, but in real life, I always figured there was a normal explanation. But there's one night from when I was a kid that never left me. It was a long time ago, maybe 8 or 9 years back, when I was around 11. I remember being in bed, staring up at the ceiling, that weird in-between moment where you're not sure if you're drifting off or if you just woke up. The room was quiet, normal. And then I looked toward the window. Sitting in the windowsill was something. Not a person, not really. More like a shape, like darkness had weight and decided to fold itself into a body. It was crouched in this unsettling way, like someone perched for a jump. The closest comparison I can make is that comic book kind of pose, where the hands are down near the feet and the knees angle out wide, like it's balanced and ready. It didn't have a clear face, not eyes you could point to, but I swear to you it still looked like it was staring directly at me. And the emotion coming off it, God, it was so strong. Angry. Not just scary angry, but this sharp, hostile feeling like it hated that I could see it. I froze for a split second, then I just bolted. I ran straight to my parents' room and shook them awake, full panic, heart slamming, trying to explain through tears and stuttering. My dad, Ethan, got up right away, and my mom, Marisol, came with us. We went back to my room together, lights on. My parents scanning the window like they were going to catch a burglar. And it was gone. They did the parent thing, bad dream. You were half asleep. Your imagination got you. And I wanted to believe them, I really did. But the problem was, I wasn't trapped in bed. I wasn't paralyzed. I hadn't been in a nightmare haze. I moved. I ran. I was awake enough to feel the carpet under my feet. So I kept that memory tucked away in my chest like a rock, heavy but hidden. Until recently. A few days ago, I was talking with my mom, just a normal conversation, nothing spooky, and she mentioned something that made my stomach drop so hard it felt like the air left my body. She told me she'd gotten up in the night to use the bathroom. She said she was fully awake, steady on her feet, not groggy. And when she stood up, she saw someone sitting in the windowsill. Not a shadow, not a coat hanging, not a shape, maybe. A dark figure, a man-shaped presence, and she said it felt angry. Then she described the way it was sitting, that same crouched, perched position, hands down near the feet, knees angled outward, like it was balanced there, watching. And here's the part that made my skin go cold. She said it didn't have a face, like there was just nothing there, a blankness where features should be. She went to the bathroom, came back, gone. And the whole time she was talking, she wasn't trying to scare me. She was just confused, disturbed, like she needed to say it out loud to make sense of it. She'd completely forgotten about what I saw as a kid. I hadn't brought it up in years. But her description matched mine so closely, it was like we were reading from the same script. And before you say it, because I tried to say it too, this wasn't sleep paralysis. I've had sleep paralysis before. I know what it feels like to be trapped in your own body, to panic because you can't move. This wasn't that. And once she said it, all these other moments I'd filed away as weird but probably nothing started crawling back. There's this story my mom told me from when I was a baby. My grandfather passed away shortly before I was born, weeks before, I think. My mom has always said she felt like he never really got to meet me, and that made her sad. One night, when I was still tiny, she was standing in the hallway and swears she watched the handle of my bedroom door turn on its own. The door opened slowly, like someone was easing it open to peek inside. No drafts, no one behind it. She always said she believed it was her dad checking on me, and that story never scared me. If anything, it felt strangely comforting. Then there was another thing. When I was somewhere around 7, give or take, I woke up in the middle of the night and saw a man sitting in the corner of my room. Not looming, not threatening, just sitting there quietly, like he was waiting. I can't remember his face now, which is frustrating, but I remember the feeling. I wasn't afraid. I was confused, maybe, but not scared. It felt calm. The next morning, I told my parents, and when we looked over at that corner, there was a big smiley face balloon tucked there. I'd drawn it myself earlier that week, so it wasn't weird for it to exist. But the thing is, in my memory, I didn't see a balloon. I saw a person. And now, after what my mom saw on the windowsill, I can't help wondering if my brain has been trying to translate something it doesn't understand into something it can handle. Like it picks man in the corner or balloon because the alternative is too wrong to process. And there's one more layer to all of this that makes it feel heavier. My family's had a rough run. Not in a dramatic movie way, just this long, grinding stretch of illness and bad luck. I've dealt with chronic health problems for as long as I can remember. My mom's been sick on and off for years. My dad's been battling depression for what feels like forever. We've even joked, half-joked, that the house has bad energy, like it's just sad, like something in it sticks to you. I always dismissed that. I didn't want to be the kind of person who blamed hard life stuff on a curse. But after my mom described that faceless, angry figure in the same place I saw it, in the same pose, with the same feeling. I don't know. Now I'm sitting here thinking, what if there really is something in this house? Or what if it's attached to the room? Or what if it's attached to us? And the scariest part is how specific it is. Like it has a favorite spot. Like it knows where to sit. Like it's done it before. Like it can do it again whenever it wants. I'm not telling you this because I want to be dramatic. I'm telling you because I'm genuinely frightened. And I needed to say it out loud to someone who will actually listen, because I don't know what else to do with it. So, when I was little, it was just me, my mom, and my two sisters in this old 1930s place at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac. It looked like a normal family home from the outside. Small front garden, neat little row of neighbors, the kind of street where you'd hear kids kicking a ball around in summer. But inside, it never felt calm. My mom was with a man back then, Callum, and he had a temper that filled up the whole house. I grew up hearing shouting that would switch from slammed doors to the kind of silence that made your stomach twist. And it wasn't just him. My Aunt Denise would show up sometimes late and drunk, angry at everything and nothing. One of my sisters, Leanne, was older than me by years, and when she hit a rough patch with drugs, it was like living beside a storm, unpredictable, loud, and terrifying. Even as a kid, I didn't sleep in total darkness. I just couldn't. The dark felt crowded, like it held its breath and waited for me to relax. One night, when I was maybe 8 or so, I was sharing a room with my stepbrother at the time, Jame. I had the top bunk, he had the bottom. I remember waking up and sitting up suddenly, like something had pulled me awake by the spine. And there, near the doorway, was this shape. Not a person exactly, but definitely male, medium build. And on his head, clear as day, a tall hat. Like an old-fashioned top hat. It wasn't fuzzy or dreamlike either. It was a solid, pitch-black silhouette that felt wrong in a way I still can't properly describe. Years later, I stumbled across people talking about the Hat Man, and my stomach dropped, because it matched what I saw so closely it made my skin prickle. But at the time, I didn't have a name for it. I just knew I was staring at something that didn't belong in my bedroom. By the time I was around 10 or 11, things changed at home. Callum and Jame were gone, and my sisters were older, off out with their own lives, so it was often just me. My mom, Tara, started leaving me home alone more and more, even at night, because she'd go to the pub with friends and lose track of time. I remember trying to fall asleep one evening and feeling this heavy presence above me, like the air had thickened. Every time I shut my eyes, it was like something leaned closer. I'd open them again, heart hammering, and I'd catch movement at the edge of my vision. Shadows on the staircase, just out of focus, like they didn't want me looking straight at them. And there were footsteps sometimes, faint, careful steps, like someone testing each stair. I got so scared of being alone in that house that I'd actually go outside and sit on the front step in the cold, hugging my knees, waiting for headlights to sweep across the road. I'd rather be out there, exposed, than inside with whatever that feeling was. The strangest part is that even before the worst of the family chaos really hit, I'd already felt like the house had sides to it. Like there was a kind of female bitterness in the garden and a male heaviness inside the walls. When I was about 7, I remember being at the bottom of the stairs needing the toilet. My sister Leanne was babysitting and told me to go upstairs. I started climbing, and halfway up I just froze. Not because I heard anything, not because I saw anything. I just couldn't move. My body refused. The landing above felt like a line I wasn't allowed to cross. I stood there long enough to start panicking, then ran back into the kitchen and ended up wetting myself because I couldn't bring myself to go up there. When I was a teenager, I tried to fight back in the only way I knew how. I stood in my room one night and said, out loud, shaky but stubborn, something like, "In the name of Jesus, you are not welcome here. Leave me alone." And right after I said it, the spare bedroom door, across the hall, made this slow, tight creak and moved like it was being gently pushed closed. Not slammed, not dramatic, just deliberate. I remember my first thought being, okay, maybe it's a window, so I ran to check. The window was shut, no draft, no one else there. And of course, when I tried telling anyone, they shrugged it off. No one in my house wanted to hear it, and no one seemed to experience it the way I did. There were other stories floating around the family too, like little crumbs of something bigger. My gran once told me she saw a woman standing at the top of her stairs, just watching. She had more than one story like that. Things she'd say in a low voice, like if she spoke too clearly, it might invite it back. My mom and her sisters used to talk about this old clown doll my gran kept, and they swore it moved on its own sometimes. They also talked about footsteps pacing and tapping on a wall. But my mom always insisted it was imagination, nerves, everyone winding each other up. One of my sisters had a moment too. She once said that when she was home alone having a bath, she heard something fall and hit the floor hard, like a heavy object. When she got out to check, nothing was out of place. Later on, she claimed she didn't remember saying it, which honestly made it feel worse somehow, like the house swallowed people's certainty. The thing that made me feel the least crazy, though, was when my sister's friend, Mia, stayed with us for a while. She brought her boyfriend over one evening, and the two of them were home alone. Later, Mia told me, wide-eyed and deadly serious, that a tray had slid, or more like flown, from a counter in the kitchen and landed on the floor across the other side of the room. And her boyfriend swore he saw it too. That's what stuck with me. Because it wasn't just a feeling, or a shadow you could blame on tired eyes. If they were telling the truth, it was something physical. A couple of years ago, I ended up talking about all of this with two old childhood friends, people I'd known back then, when I still lived in that house. I hadn't told anyone outside family as a kid, not really. I just kept it tucked away like a shameful secret. One friend told me she always felt like something was in the walls, like the house had a pulse you couldn't see. Another friend, who'd gotten into spiritual practices as an adult, said she felt a dark female presence connected to the garden shed out back. And then, this part still gets me. I moved out, built a life away from that street, and for a while everything went quiet. Until it didn't. About 8 years after leaving, I started feeling watched again. It was subtle at first, like the same old sensation creeping back, that prickling awareness at the back of my neck. I mentioned it casually to a woman I worked with, Sienna, who said she was clairvoyant. I didn't tell her the whole story. I only said I'd been feeling like someone was there, like I wasn't alone when I should have been. She looked at me and said, very calmly, that she'd sensed something around me for a while. She called it a negative attachment. She described it as sadistic, like it fed on fear and emotion. And the horrible thing is, it was exactly how I would have described it myself if I'd had the courage to say it out loud first. But then my dad went quiet and told me something that made my whole body go cold. He said that when he was a kid, he grew up rough, in care, moved around a lot. He used to see a male figure outside his bedroom window. A man-shaped shadow, watching. And when I described what I'd seen as a child, he said it freaked him out because it sounded the same. The thing is, I didn't grow up with my dad. We reconnected when I was 16, so it's not like I heard his story first and absorbed it. If anything, it felt like two separate puzzle pieces snapping together in a way I didn't want. And now, honestly, I still don't know what to believe. I'm older, but I still feel watched sometimes. I still can't fully relax in the dark. Part of me wonders if it's trauma, years of tension in a house that never felt safe, my brain wired to expect danger. Part of me wonders if it's something else, something that clung on, or something that runs in families like an echo. All I know is this. Even now, when the lights go out, there's a part of me that waits. Like I'm listening for the stairs. Like I'm still that kid in the front garden, watching the road, praying for headlights. Hey, thanks for listening. I'm Elena, and this is one of those memories that never really leaves you, no matter how much time passes. So, when I was a kid, maybe 8 or 9, somewhere in that range, I had this experience that still makes my stomach tighten when I think about it. I've only ever met one other person who described something even remotely similar, which honestly is part of why it stuck with me so hard. It was late, and I'd already climbed into bed. I wasn't drifting off. I know I was awake. Our place was small back then, and my bedroom was basically tucked off the main area, so from where I was lying, I could see into the hallway and the kitchen beyond it. And then, out of nowhere, everything started vibrating. Not like a little shake. I mean violent. Like the whole world had turned into a buzzing, rattling machine. The mattress was trembling under me. My body was trembling with it. Like the vibration was coming from the air itself. It lasted only a few seconds, maybe 3 or 4, but it felt longer because my brain couldn't catch up to what was happening. That's when I looked forward, and I saw it. There was this shadow thing, right there in my line of sight. It didn't look like a normal shadow. The best way I can explain it is that it looked flat, almost two-dimensional, like someone cut a shape out of darkness and held it upright. It had this rounded head and these short horns that curved up from the sides. I can't swear on every detail, but I remember thinking it had hands that ended in points, like claws. And while the room kept vibrating like crazy, it started moving toward me. I keep saying moving, but it didn't walk like a person. It was more like it would jump forward in little bursts, like a glitch in a video game. 1 second it was there, then it wasn't. Then it was suddenly closer, and closer again. I completely lost it. I was crying, screaming, just panicking in that helpless, child way where your whole body feels too small for the fear inside it. And the worst part was that nothing I did changed anything. The shaking didn't slow down, and the thing didn't stop. It got so close to me that I swear, if I'd scooted even a tiny bit toward the edge of the bed, my face would have touched it. That's the part I can still feel in my memory. The closeness. Like it was right up against my space, right up against me. And then I screamed for my mom. "Mom!" as loud as I could. The instant I did, everything stopped. The vibration cut out like someone flipped a switch, and the shadow thing vanished. Not faded away, not backed up into the dark, just gone, right in front of my eyes. People sometimes suggest things like dreams or sleep stuff, and I get why they say that. But what messes with me is how seamless it was. There wasn't any hazy shift, no moment where I woke up. I was already awake, and when it disappeared, I didn't lie there confused. I shot up immediately and ran. Like, I didn't hesitate. I sprinted straight to my mom's room as fast as my legs could carry me. I'm 19 now, so this happened around a decade ago, give or take, and I still think about it more often than I'd like to admit. I guess what I want to know is, has anyone else ever had something like that? The shaking, the buzzing, the way the figure moved, any of it. Because it's such a specific kind of terrifying, and I've spent years wondering what I actually experienced that night. So, let me tell you about my mom's place. It's this big, creaky old house, something like 120 years old now, and I used to live there full-time for a long stretch. And in my family, believing in ghosts isn't some quirky idea we joke about. It's just normal. Like, of course there's something here, kind of normal. Especially when we first moved in, maybe 8 or 9 years ago. There were little things that happened often enough that nobody could really shrug it off. Funny thing is, I was never the one with the most stories. I'd hear footsteps when nobody was upstairs, or I'd notice a door that I swear I shut sitting slightly open later, but nothing dramatic. Except for 2 moments years back that still stick to me. One of them isn't even worth getting into. It was weird, but whatever. The other one, that one still makes my chest feel tight when I remember it. I walked into the living room one night, just stepped in like normal, and it hit me like a wave. Full body panic. Like my brain suddenly decided I was in danger, even though nothing was happening. My heart was racing, my hands were tingling. I felt like I couldn't breathe right. It was so intense I actually backed out of the room. And the second I went into the kitchen, like the moment I crossed that doorway, it stopped. Completely. As if someone flicked a switch. I was alone that night, and at that age I was already kind of terrified of the idea that there were entities in the house. So I don't know what to make of it. Nothing jumped out at me, nothing chased me, no movie-style horror, just that sudden, targeted dread. Like the living room didn't want me there. My mom got really into the history of the place after a while. Old records, local stories, anything she could dig up. And she's convinced the main presence is a little girl. She calls her Lydia, which is not anyone's real name, just what she's always called her. Mom says Lydia feels like she's everywhere. The hallway, the stairs, sometimes the kitchen, sometimes the guest room. Then there's apparently another presence too, an older man. Weirdly gentle, calm, more like he's just hanging out. My mom calls him Walter, and she swears he mostly sticks to the master bedroom. Here's where it gets stranger. I moved out in 2020, and ever since then, like the last 2 or 3 years, every single time I go back to visit, I start feeling off. Not like a cold, not like allergies. No runny nose, no sore throat, no cough. It's more like an internal uneasiness, like my body is tired before I've done anything. Almost feverish, but not actually sick. Just drained and uncomfortable in a way I can't point to. Like my skin is heavier. Like my bones are tired. And it isn't just me. My sister has mentioned feeling the same thing, and my ex, Caleb, used to say the house made him feel wiped out too. He'd be totally fine anywhere else. Then we'd go over there, and within a little while, he'd get quiet and fatigued, like someone turned down his energy. At first I thought, okay, obvious answer. Mold. Old house, old walls, maybe something hiding where you can't see it. But it's not like I step through the front door and instantly start coughing or feeling dizzy. It's not immediate like that. And my mom and the rest of the family who still live there, they're fine. Totally normal. No weird fatigue, no headaches, nothing. But me? Every visit, same pattern. And my sleep changes too. Normally I sleep like a rock. I rarely wake up once I'm out. But when I'm there, I wake up in the night, sometimes multiple times, like my body can't settle, like it's listening for something. Today I finally asked my mom straight up, "Do you know if there's mold here?" And she was like, "Maybe. I wouldn't be surprised, but I don't know where, and I feel fine." So then I asked, "Does anyone else feel weird here when they visit?" And she said, "Just your sister. That's all I've heard." Then she said something that made my stomach drop. She goes, real casually, "You know, the activity kind of stopped when you moved out." And I laughed, like a little laugh, automatic. Because what do you even do with that? But inside I felt, weirdly offended. Like, excuse me? What am I, the haunted house battery pack? But also, it scared me. Enough that I'm even talking about this at all. Because if things really did quiet down when I left, then why do I feel worse every time I come back? I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Part of me wants a logical explanation. Air quality, mold, stress, whatever. And another part of me can't ignore the pattern, or that living room moment, or the way my body reacts like it's bracing for something I can't see. And I keep coming back to this thought. I don't want a fight. I don't want to get rid of anything. If there is something there, Lydia, Walter, whatever it is, I don't want war. I want peace. I want to understand what's wrong. I want to stop feeling like the house is pulling the energy right out of me. I just don't know how to make peace with something I can't even prove is there. Hey, so this is something I didn't really talk about when I was a kid, mostly because I honestly didn't know it wasn't normal. When I was little, I used to get these strange moments, like I could sense someone right beside me when I was alone. Sometimes I'd hear a voice, like a quick whisper or a soft conversation, and then I'd realize there wasn't actually anyone there. And once in a while, it felt like something brushed my shoulder or pressed gently against my arm, the way a person does when they're trying to comfort you. The weird part is, it never felt threatening. If anything, I always felt safest in places that are supposed to feel creepy, like cemeteries. I know that sounds backwards, but graveyards always felt calm to me, like being wrapped up in a quiet blanket. Like I wasn't alone there. Like I was being watched over, in a good way. And then there was my childhood bedroom. That room had history. My mom told me it used to belong to my grandmother when she was young, and even as a kid, I felt like the room remembered people. The air felt heavy sometimes, but not in a bad way, more like it was full. One night, I went to sleep, and it was one of those rare sleeps where there were no dreams at all. Just darkness, stillness, peaceful. Then I woke up, like my body snapped awake before my mind even caught up. That almost never happened to me. I'd wake up sometimes, sure, but not like that. Not with that sudden spike of fear, like my heart was shouting, "Get up, get up, get up!" I stared into the dimness of my room, trying to make sense of why I felt so panicked. And that's when I saw him. Right near the closet, just outside the doorframe, there was this tall figure. Not a person exactly, more like a shape cut out of the darkness, darker than the darkness around it. He didn't move. He just stood there like he'd been waiting. And then I saw his eyes. Not glowing like a flashlight or anything, just this deep, unnatural red, like two embers. And I noticed something else that made my stomach drop. One arm was missing, gone from just below the elbow, like it ended too cleanly to be an accident. I remember pulling the blanket up so fast it nearly covered my nose, like that was going to protect me from whatever I'd just seen. And I started whispering to myself. Stupid little calming phrases, anything to keep myself from crying. I told myself it was just a trick of sleep, just shadows, just my brain. Eventually, I fell asleep like that, curled up tight, barely breathing. The next morning, I ran downstairs and told my dad. He didn't laugh exactly, but he wasn't scared either. He just kind of nodded like I'd told him I had a weird dream. Then he said something I'll never forget. He goes, "That sounds like your great-great-grandfather, Owen." And I was like, "What?" My dad walked to the hallway closet and pulled something out. An old prosthetic arm, the kind with worn straps and a faded, almost antique look to it. And the way it was built, it started right below the elbow, right where the figure's arm ended. I stood there staring at it for what felt like forever. And because my dad wasn't panicking, because he acted like this was just a strange family footnote, I tried to match his calm. I swallowed it down and told myself, okay, fine. Weird family thing. Moving on. I didn't really talk about it again for years. But when I was older, I finally mentioned it to my grandmother, Nana Ruth, just casually, like I was testing the water. And she didn't look surprised. She smiled, like I just reminded her of something sweet. Then she told me her story. Not rushing, not looming, just present. And according to her, he held out his hand, like a patient adult offering help. She said she took it. He walked her downstairs, step by step, helped her get a glass of water, walked her back up, and then, this part gives me chills every time. She said he tucked her in the way a parent would, like it was the most natural thing in the world, and she fell asleep feeling completely safe. When she finished telling me, she just looked at me with this soft expression and said, "He's always been around." And that's the thing. Over the years, I've still seen him. Not constantly, not like some movie where he's always in the corner of your vision, but enough times that I can't just pretend it was childhood imagination. And he's never hurt me. He's never threatened me. If anything, he shows up most when I'm vulnerable. Once, when I was really sick, like feverish, miserable, the kind of sick where the room feels like it's tilting, I kept noticing a shadowy figure watching from the edge of the doorway. Not staring in a predatory way, more like checking on me, like a quiet guard. It's hard to explain without sounding ridiculous, but it felt like concern. My family has stories too. Nana Ruth does, and my cousin Marin, who's just a little older than me, used to talk about a shadow friend when we were kids. She'd play in her room and leave space for him like he was really there. She even gave him a name, the Shadow Man. The creepy part is, neither of us knew the other had seen anything like that. We never compared notes. We never even talked about it. We only found out because Nana Ruth connected the dots one day, like she'd been holding the thread the whole time. So now, I'm left with this weird, lingering question. If this thing has followed our family for generations, if it's shown up in the same house, in the same halls, in the same kind of quiet moments, what is it? A protector? A spirit with some kind of attachment? Just a shared family story that our brains shaped into the same image. All I know is, I don't feel afraid of him. I feel watched over. But I can't help wondering if that's naive. Like maybe I've been calm about something I shouldn't be calm about. So yeah, that's why I'm telling you. Do you think this is something to be concerned about? Or does it sound like whatever this is, it's been trying to take care of us? So, I don't talk about this a lot, because even saying it out loud makes my skin prickle a little. But I'll start at the beginning. My first memory of it. It was Christmas Eve, and I was about 6 or 7. My brothers and sisters and I had all camped out in the living room together, like we always begged to do. Blankets on the floor, whispering until we got shushed, the whole thing. At some point in the night, I woke up. One of those half-awake moments where the room feels too quiet, like it's holding its breath, and I saw something moving down the hallway. At first I thought, oh, it's just our dog. We had this big black shepherd mix back then. His name was Ranger, and he padded around the house at night sometimes. Still, it startled me enough that I just watched. The shape came into the living room and drifted toward this sunken seating area we had, kind of like a little step-down nook. It had built-in couches with wooden backs, and those backs were narrow, honestly, not wide enough for a dog to balance on. But the thing, this dog-shaped figure, hopped up onto the back of the couch anyway. Not clumsy, not scrambling, more like a cat, smooth and weirdly precise. And then it perched there, completely still, like it had done it 100 times, just watching all of us sleeping. That's when the dread hit me, like someone poured ice water down my spine. I remember my chest tightening, my eyes stinging, and then I started crying. Quiet at first, then harder. I squeezed my eyes shut and just stayed frozen under my blanket until I eventually fell asleep again. For years, I tried to write it off as a nightmare. Except, later, when I brought it up, my siblings all went, "Wait, you remember that?" They didn't see what I saw, but they remembered me crying and being absolutely terrified in the middle of the night. That part was real. The next time was in high school. I woke up suddenly, and the first thing I saw was a shadow in the corner of my room. And my room was on the same floor, down the same hallway where I'd seen that dog-shaped figure when I was little. I remember staring so hard my eyes watered, trying to make my brain explain it away. A jacket? A chair? One of my sisters messing with me? I cycled through every excuse like I could force it to become normal. But the longer I looked, the more wrong it felt. The outline was dog-like, but the joints, this is the part I can never quite explain without sounding ridiculous. The joints looked human, like the way an arm folds or a knee bends. It was sitting there in a way that reminded me of a person crouched low in the corner, except it had the shape of a dog, and it felt like it was watching me. After that, it started happening more often, waking up with that heavy, someone's here feeling, catching shadows that didn't make sense, nights where I barely slept. And at the same time, my life was kind of falling apart in the normal teenage way, but louder. My mental health was bad. I was angry all the time, fighting with my family, failing classes, just constantly exhausted and on edge. My parents pushed me into therapy because they didn't know what else to do with me, and honestly, I didn't know what to do with me either. There's one night that stands out more than the rest. I'd worked myself up so badly that I couldn't stay in my room anymore. I went to my sister Maya's room, right next to mine, and asked if I could sleep in there. She said yes, so I dragged my pillow and blanket in and curled up at the foot of her bed. And I slept great. No weird feelings, no shadows, nothing. That night was bright because the moon was full, and our back doors had big glass panels, so the house always caught shadows, tree branches moving, sometimes the animals in the yard if they wandered close enough. So I told myself, if I see something, it'll probably just be that. I stepped out of my sister's room into the hallway, clutching my blanket and pillow, and I froze so hard I swear I forgot how to breathe. I hadn't even seen anything yet. This was pure instinct. The hair on my arms lifted. The back of my neck went hot and tight. My body just locked up like it knew before my brain did. From where I stood, I couldn't see all the way down the hall, but I could see the wall that led into it. And on that wall, sliding into view, was the shadow of a dog, walking. The shape was unmistakable. The legs moved in that steady, casual way like it was just approaching, like it belonged there. And here's the thing. Our dog, Ranger, had been gone for months by then. I tried to reason it out anyway. A tree shadow, an animal outside, something passing the glass door. I tried so hard to make it be something normal, but the shadow kept getting closer, and it started to shift and shrink in a way that didn't match anything outside. It wasn't moving like a distant shadow from the yard. It was moving like whatever was making it was coming down the hallway toward me. Right before it would have rounded the corner into view, I snapped out of it. I bolted back into my sister's room, flipped on the light, and shook her awake. I was shaking so badly I could barely get words out. I didn't even know how to explain what I'd just seen, only that I couldn't go back out there. The next morning, I told my mom, and she didn't laugh. She didn't roll her eyes. She just got this tired, serious look and said something like, "I'm not surprised. When we were younger, your Aunt Leanne used a Ouija board in that part of the house. I've always felt like something lingered." That made my stomach drop, because I hadn't told her about the Christmas Eve thing. I hadn't told her about the corner shadow. She just already believed it could be real. After that, I told my other sister Tessa, and she went quiet, then admitted she'd always felt watched too, especially from the loft area in her room. And then she told me something that honestly freaked me out almost more than my own stories. She said once, when everyone else was out camping, she stayed home alone. She was on her bed with her back toward the bedroom door, and she felt what she thought was her cat climbing up, like that familiar little shift of weight on the mattress. She reached back to pet it, but the fur felt wrong. Coarse, wiry, mangy, nothing like her cat. She jerked her hand away and looked down, and her cat was curled up at the foot of the bed, asleep, not moving. She spun around, heart pounding, and there was nothing there. She said she searched the whole house for almost an hour, convinced maybe an animal had gotten in somehow, a raccoon, a stray, anything. But she found nothing. No open doors, no signs, nothing. After all that, weirdly, I didn't really see it again. We'd still get strange little things, like knocks on bedroom doors when no one was there. Stuff you could almost shrug off if you tried hard enough. But as I got older, I started spending less time at home. I started dating, staying out more, and eventually I moved out. And the less time I spent in that house, the better I got. That's the part I can't ignore. I've tried 100 times to convince myself it was all just dreams, or stress, or my mind filling in shadows. I've even wondered if my family, without meaning to, kind of fed the story and made it bigger over time. But there's still this part of me that won't let it go, because that fear felt real. And some nights, it really did feel like whatever was there, if anything was there, was drawn to me when I was at my lowest. Like it liked the version of me that was exhausted and angry and unraveling. I don't know. I don't have a neat ending. I just know the image of that dog-shaped thing perched like a cat on a narrow wooden couch back still comes to me sometimes, sharp as a photograph. And if you've ever heard of something like that, a dog-like figure with human-like joints, moving wrong, watching, please tell me I'm not the only one. So, I've always been that kid, the sensitive one, the one who notices everything. Sounds that feel too sharp, lights that feel too bright, certain smells that make my stomach turn, and sometimes just a weird vibe in a room that makes me want to leave immediately. And along with all that sensitivity, there were these moments, ever since I can remember, where I'd hear or see things that didn't really line up with reality. The very first thing I can clearly pull up in my mind happened when I was tiny, like preschool tiny. I was on the floor in my bedroom, playing with this little plastic triceratops I was obsessed with, and I hear someone outside my window call my name in this soft, sing-song voice, sweet, affectionate, the way a parent calls you when dinner's ready. It was so warm and familiar that I didn't even hesitate. I remember popping up, leaning toward the window and going, "Yes?" all cheerful. And there was nobody, nothing, just quiet. Now the weird part? My name back then was uncommon, not unheard of, but rare enough that I barely ever met anyone with it. So it wasn't like the neighborhood was full of kids getting called in for snacks. It felt aimed at me. A few years later, maybe I was 8 or 9, we moved because my stepdad's job transferred him. New area, new house. And it wasn't one of those creaky, ancient places with a dramatic attic and scary family legends. It was bright, modern, clean lines, big windows. The kind of house where you'd think nothing spooky could stick. But almost immediately, kid me became convinced there was someone upstairs who wasn't part of our family. Not a monster, not evil, just there. Like a presence that didn't belong to us, and didn't care that I noticed it. I didn't know what else to do, so I tried to be polite. I'd say hello when I walked past the stairs. Good night. Goodbye when I left for school. Like, hey, I see you. Please don't make this worse. And then, honestly, the hardest part started. I watched a scary movie at a sleepover, or maybe it was at home, I don't even remember anymore. And it rattled me in a way I didn't expect. You know how people say, it's just a movie, you'll forget it in a few days? Yeah, not me. That fear didn't fade, it grew. Nights became this whole ordeal. I'd lie in bed with the lamp on, heart thumping, and this heavy dread would settle over me like a blanket I couldn't throw off. Sometimes I'd see shapes, thin, almost see-through silhouettes, moving through my room even when I could clearly see everything around me. Like they weren't hiding, like they didn't need to. When it got too intense, I'd creep into my mom's room and ask if I could sleep next to her. And she'd let me, because she's my mom, and she wanted me to feel safe. But here's the part that still makes my skin prickle a little. Even next to her, it didn't fully stop. A couple of times, I'd hear that same sing-song voice again, calling my name like it was coaxing me. And hearing it while I was curled up beside my mom sent me straight into panic, because it made me realize something. Whatever it was, it didn't care where I was sleeping. And then there was this other thing that happened too. These strange wake-ups that weren't really wake-ups. Like I'd open my eyes, and I'd know I was conscious, but my body wouldn't cooperate. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. And sometimes I'd get this sensation of drifting upward, floating, like I was lighter than air. Then I'd struggle, like fight to come back, and suddenly it felt like I'd drop from somewhere high above, falling fast, and I'd slam right back into myself. But around 12 or 13, something shifted. I can't even tell you what changed. Nothing dramatic happened, no big revelation. But suddenly, I could sleep without a light on. Nights weren't perfect, but they stopped being a nightly horror show. After that, the experiences became occasional. Maybe once in a while I'd wake up and feel that familiar dread, the strong impression that something was in the room with me. But I wasn't the same little kid anymore. I'd grown. I'd adapted. So I taught myself a trick, kind of a mental reflex. And yes, it sounds silly, but it helped. I called it the now shield, because when you're lying there, half awake, heart racing, you don't need a plan for next week. You need something that works right now. So I'd picture this barrier snapping into place around me the second I said the word in my head. Not just a bubble of protection, more like a force field with teeth. Like anything that meant me harm would get hurt if it tried to push in. It didn't erase the fear instantly, but it gave me something solid to hold on to. Like, okay, I'm scared, but I'm not helpless. And for years, that was the routine. Once or twice a year maybe, I'd jolt awake in that old dread, and I'd throw up the now shield, like flipping on a switch, and I'd eventually fall asleep again. As I moved through my 20s and into my 30s, it happened less and less. Like whatever thread connected me to it was thinning. And then there was one last moment, the only one in my adult life that felt undeniably weird. I was 27. I'd just gotten into this relationship with a guy named Milan, and it was, how do I put this kindly, emotionally loud. A lot of stress, a lot of tension. The kind of relationship where your nervous system never fully unclenches. Sometimes on weekends we'd take an edible to shut our brains off for a few hours. One night, he was already asleep. I was in the bathroom, doing the normal bedtime stuff, brushing my teeth, splashing water on my face, trying to feel human. I walk back into the bedroom, and I stop dead, because there's a dark figure standing at the foot of the bed. Not a shadow from the closet, not a coat on a chair. A shape that had presence, humanish, tall, still, like it belonged there. And here's the part that shocked me. I wasn't terrified. I was startled, absolutely. My whole body went, "What the hell?" But I didn't feel that old, drowning fear. If anything, I had this odd impression that it was just as surprised as I was, like we both turned the corner at the same time. And I did something I honestly didn't know I was capable of. I stepped forward and I swung my hand straight through it, like a shove, like a smack, like, "No, not tonight." There was no resistance. My hand passed right through. But the moment it did, this icy cold rushed up my arm and spread through my chest, like the air in my body had turned to winter for half a second. And then it vanished. The cold faded. The figure was gone. And since that night, nothing. No sing-song voice, no dread, no shapes, no floating falling wake-ups, no need for the now shield. Just quiet. And I don't know what that means. I don't know if it was my brain, my stress, the edible, the house, my nervous system, something spiritual, something psychological, maybe a tangled mix of all of it. But what I do know is this. For the first time since I was a kid, the night finally felt like it belonged to me. Okay, so I've had a handful of things happen to me over the years that I still can't fully explain. And weirdly enough, the place it happened the most was my grandparents' house. The first time I was really little, maybe 4 or 5. I remember staying the night there, just visiting, and we were all in the living room watching TV. At some point, I had to pee so bad I thought I was going to explode, so I ran to the bathroom. I did my business, and as I went to leave, I reached for the door. My hand was still on the inside handle as I started to pull it shut behind me. And I swear to you, I felt this cold, tiny hand slide right over mine, like it grabbed my hand on top of the handle. And then I heard a little girl's voice, right up close by my ear, whisper one word. Not my name, something else. She whispered, "Mason." I spun around so fast my heart practically jumped out of my throat. And there was nothing there. The bathroom felt way darker all of a sudden, like the air got heavier, and I just bolted, straight back to the living room. I told my grandparents what happened, and they kind of laughed it off like, "Oh, you've got a big imagination," the way adults do. And sure, I did. Like I loved drawing monsters and pretending I was some superhero when I ran around outside. But I wasn't the kind of kid who made up voices in my ear or felt hands grabbing mine. That didn't feel like pretend. That felt real. The second time was years later, still at my grandparents' place, only this was after my grandma had passed away. We were all there for a holiday dinner. I want to say it was Thanksgiving, but it might have been Christmas. I just know the house was full, and everyone was talking and laughing and doing that thing families do where they end up reminiscing. I was in the living room with a few relatives, talking about old memories. My grandma, funny stories, all that. And out of nowhere, I felt a tug on my sleeve from behind. Not a brush, not like someone bumped me, an actual tug, like somebody trying to get my attention. I turned around, expecting to see my little niece, Ava, messing with me. But nobody was there. I could see into the hallway. Nobody behind the couch. Nothing. I told myself it was probably nothing. Maybe my shirt snagged on something. A few minutes later, it happened again. Harder this time, like a real pull. This time I whipped around immediately. Like the second I felt it, I turned. And again, nothing. No one close enough to have done it, and Ava was right in front of me on the floor playing with a toy, totally focused, not even looking my way. So I did the awkward thing and asked around like, okay, who's messing with me? Everyone swore they weren't. No jokes, no laughing, no gotcha. Just genuine confusion. Could it have been a prank? Maybe. But if it was, nobody's admitted it. And to this day, that still bugs me, because it felt the same kind of strange as what happened when I was little, like something reaching for me from just out of sight. The third set of experiences happened later in the house I live in now, out near the woods, just outside town. And this one isn't like one big moment. It's more like a bunch of smaller things that pile up. Like, I've had stuff get knocked off counters when I know for a fact it was sitting stable and centered. No edge, no wobble, no reason it should have fallen. One time I had my backpack hanging up in the hallway on a hook, one of those big, sturdy hooks with a deep loop. The bag was heavy, full of textbooks. There's no way it should have slipped off unless someone lifted it up and off the hook. And sometimes, when the house is really quiet, especially if I'm sitting there drawing or just zoning out, I'll hear faint voices from another room. Not loud enough to make out words, but enough to make my head snap up like, hello? And every time, I'm alone. Then a couple weeks ago, my sister, Lena, decided it was a good idea to mess with a Ouija board, even though I told her not to. I warned her. I really did. Later, she told me something that honestly made my stomach drop. She and her boyfriend Jordan were in their room watching TV when both of them saw something, move into the bathroom, just out of the corner of their eyes. They described it the same way, like a person-shaped shadow, almost solid black. Here's the part that gets me. Neither of them said anything. They both saw it, but they didn't speak. They just kind of froze and kept watching the TV like maybe they could pretend it didn't happen. After a while, like 20 minutes, they called out my name, thinking it was me messing around since I was the only other person in the house. They knocked. No answer. So they opened the bathroom door, and nobody was there. That's when they finally admitted to each other what they'd seen, and apparently they both described the same thing without prompting. They came to my room freaked out and asked if I'd gone in there. I told them no, and yeah. They were spooked after that. Honestly, so was I. And then there's one more story. This one didn't happen to me, but it happened to my brother Caleb a few years back in this same house. He got really sick, like dangerously sick. He's okay now, thank God. But he told me that when he was at his worst, he was outside on the back porch throwing up, barely able to move, just drained and shaky. He looked out toward the pasture behind the house, and he said he saw 3 figures come out from the tree line. 3 tall shapes, all dressed in black. And he said their eyes looked huge, dark and wrong, and their mouths were wide open, almost like those horror masks, except he swore it was like human faces, just twisted and withered. He said they just stood there staring at him. He forced himself up, stumbled back inside, and looked out through the window. And they were gone, like they were never there. Now, I don't know what to make of that one. Part of me wonders if he was hallucinating because he was so sick. But it still messes with me, especially with everything else that's happened in this house. So yeah, that's basically the collection of weird stuff that's happened to me and my family. I'm not sitting here claiming I have all the answers. I don't. I just know what I felt, what I heard, what I saw, and it didn't feel like, oops, coincidence in the moment. I'm a Christian, so I pray over my home and my family. And we're okay. We're living our lives. Nothing's dragging chains down the hallway every night or anything like that. But looking back, it still gives me chills. And honestly, more than anything, it makes the world feel bigger. Like there's more going on than we can easily explain. Maybe it's spiritual. Maybe it's the brain playing tricks. Maybe it's coincidence stacked on coincidence. Believe me or don't, either way is fine. I just wanted to share it because it's strange, it's spooky, and it's been sitting with me for a long time. So, I want to tell you about my grandma. Her name was Mei Ling, and the strangest, most comforting dream I've ever had. It started in late September 2024. At first, we didn't even realize something was seriously wrong. She was acting off, weak, kind of confused, struggling in ways we kept trying to explain away. We thought maybe she was just exhausted or coming down with something. But after about several days of watching her get worse, we rushed her to the ER. She ended up staying in the hospital for weeks, and during that time, she was put on a ventilator more than once. Each time they had to do it, it felt like we lost a little more of her. When she'd wake up again, it wasn't really her the way we knew her. Her speech started slipping away, and she couldn't stay awake long. It was like her body was still fighting, but her mind was getting pulled farther and farther from us. The last time they put her on the ventilator was overnight, going into the start of the week. And what made it so brutal was that she'd actually seemed a little better in the days before that, like maybe she was turning a corner. So when it happened again, it hit us like a wave. Just pure shock. I remember being at work when my dad, June, called me. I stepped out, sat in my car during lunch, and I just broke. Like that ugly, can't breathe kind of crying. Then I wiped my face, walked back in, and pretended I was functioning. You know how people do that when they don't have a choice? That night I went to see her. There wasn't much to say or do. She was lying there, ventilator, quiet, unresponsive. The room felt heavy, like the air itself was tired. I went home, got ready for bed, and fell asleep almost immediately. And then I had this dream. In the dream, I'm back at the hospital, and it starts with me riding the elevator up to her floor. I can still picture it, like I'm actually standing there, watching the numbers climb. The doors open, and I step out, and everything is so familiar that it feels real. I turn the corner, walk down the hallway, and go straight to her room. When I walk in, she's sitting up in the bed, and she looks like herself. Not like the version I'd been seeing in the hospital. Her hair is neatly brushed. Her face looks warm and awake. There are no tubes, no IV lines, no medical restraints, no compression socks, none of it. Her eyes are bright, like the way they used to be when she'd tease me or laugh at something on TV. And she's smiling at me, really smiling. We only ever spoke Chinese together, so in the dream she speaks to me in Chinese, like normal, like nothing ever happened. And she says, so gently, something like, "Don't be scared anymore. I'm going to be okay. Everything will be okay. You don't have to carry this worry for me." And that's it. The dream just ends, like someone turned off a light. I woke up so confused, because I don't usually have dreams like that. Most of my dreams are chaotic and ridiculous, like my brain throws random nonsense at the wall and calls it a night. But this one was different. It was clear, calm, detailed. It felt like a real visit. The next day I told my dad about it. He went to see her earlier than I could, and he said she still wasn't responsive. He didn't stay long because it was just hard. And after work, even though I was exhausted and honestly didn't want to go, because going there every day was wearing me down, I went anyway. I couldn't stand the thought of not showing up. When I got there, her body felt cold in places. I remember holding her hand and realizing how quickly someone can feel like they're slipping away. Like you're watching it happen and you can't stop it. And I know people can explain dreams a million different ways. I know grief does things to your mind, but I can't help what it felt like. It felt like she came to me on purpose. Like she wanted to tell me, I'm okay. You can breathe now. And honestly, that message held me up. It gave me a kind of closure I didn't know I needed so badly. I still miss her. I miss her all the time. But I'm grateful, so unbelievably grateful, that I got one last moment with her, even if it was in a dream. Okay, so I have to tell you about what happened the other night, because it seriously messed with me in a way I didn't expect. I first saw The Sixth Sense, you know, that M. Night Shyamalan movie, forever ago. Like when it was still one of those, you have to see this films everyone was talking about. Back then, I remember thinking it was brilliant. Genuinely. I told people to watch it, recommended it without hesitation, the whole thing. Fast forward to a few nights ago. My husband, Evan, and I were scrolling around, doing that classic, nothing looks good routine. And somehow we land on The Sixth Sense. He'd never seen it, which felt almost impossible to me, so I was like, oh, we're doing this. Tonight. I remembered the famous twist, of course I did. But I'd forgotten most of the rest. I honestly thought it would be fun, like revisiting an old classic where you notice new details and appreciate how well it's made. And while we were watching it, that part was true. It is incredibly well done. The acting, the mood, the slow burn of it, it's just a good movie. But when it ended, I fell apart. And I don't mean like, oh, that was creepy. I mean I was wrecked. I got this intense, sick, unsettled feeling that dug into me and would not let go. Like my body was reacting as if something I'd seen wasn't fiction. It was a warning. Like it had tapped into something real, something too close. I remember sitting there afterward trying to act normal, like, haha, wow, great movie. But inside I was spiraling. My chest felt tight. My skin felt prickly. And the worst part was this heavy, awful certainty, like, that's how it is. That's what's really out there. So I started doing what I always do when I'm freaked out. I tried to explain it away. I asked myself if maybe the first time I watched it, I was going through something stressful, and this second viewing just reopened that feeling. But I can't point to anything specific. Nothing obvious. No clear trigger. What I can say is this. The way the movie portrays ghosts feels disturbingly believable to me. Not the theatrical stuff, not the dramatic, floating sheet nonsense, but the way they seem stuck in their own pain, repeating patterns, showing up with this raw emotion still clinging to them. That part hit me like a punch because it matched something I've quietly felt for a long time. I've never had some vivid, full-on experience like the kid in the movie. Nothing like seeing someone standing clearly in the hallway or talking to a dead person in a room. But I've always felt like the distance between me and whatever you want to call it is smaller than it is for other people. Like there's a thinner veil, a thinner membrane. I've had moments, tiny ones, where a room suddenly feels occupied in a way I can't explain. Or I get that sensation of being watched when I'm completely alone. Or I'll walk into a space and it feels emotionally charged, like the air is holding on to something that happened there. And I know people can call that anxiety, imagination, suggestion. Trust me, I've said all of those words to myself too. But after watching that movie again, it felt like the film was speaking the same language as those moments. Like it wasn't inventing the idea of the paranormal, it was recognizing it. And here's the part that's hard to admit. I haven't slept properly since. Every time the house gets quiet, my brain starts replaying images, and it's not even specific scenes, it's the feeling of the movie. That grim, real, unavoidable sense of, what if? I keep thinking I'm going to open my eyes in the dark and see something. I keep bracing for a sound, a presence, a shift in the air. It's gotten to the point where I'm honestly worried about myself. Like, am I just overtired? Did I freak myself out so badly that my nervous system is stuck in fight or flight? Or did the movie press on something I've kept tucked away, and now I can't shut the door again? So I have to ask, because I feel a little alone in this. Has this ever happened to you? Have you ever watched something and it didn't just scare you, it shattered you? Like it climbed into your life and wouldn't leave? Because that's where I am right now. And I hate how real it feels. Hey, thanks for letting me share this. It's been years since I've talked about what it was like growing up with whatever was in that old house. I'll say haunted just because it's the easiest word, but honestly, I still don't know where the line is between ghosts, weird phenomena, or something our brains can't neatly label. I just know what my family and I saw, heard, and lived through, especially from the mid-90s onward, when it started happening so often that it almost became part of the rhythm of our days. And I'm telling you all this for a couple reasons. One, I'm still trying to make sense of it. Two, I want to know if anyone else has been through something like this. And three, if I'm being really honest, some nights when I'm alone in the dark, I still get that familiar fear, like the air could shift and I'd be right back there again. I'd love to believe it was tied to that place and that it's not something that could follow me, or my kids. So, quick background. I was born in 1981, and we moved into this creaky farmhouse when I was about 4. It sat on land where there used to be a small cemetery, supposedly moved decades earlier to another part of town. The main part of the house dated back to 1902, and there'd been additions over time. The kind of house where every hallway creaks like it's clearing its throat. I was the oldest, girl, and I had 2 younger brothers. I'll call them Owen and Jude. And if you want my best guess, it never felt like just one presence. It felt like at least 3. A little kid kind of energy sometimes, mischief. A teenager vibe that felt restless. And then something older, heavier, harder to ignore. Anyway, out of everything that happened there, these are 3 moments that still stick in my bones. The toy boat, Christmas morning, 1990. So, Christmas morning, I woke up early, like kids do, and I heard this humming sound downstairs. Not a normal house sound, not pipes, not the heater. A steady, mechanical hum. Back then, being the oldest meant I was basically the second parent whenever the adults were asleep. So my first thought was, those boys got up and started playing without me. I marched down the hall toward Owen and Jude's room, already annoyed, ready to catch them in the act. But when I pushed their door open, both of them were out cold. Little kid sprawls, totally asleep. And the second I stepped back into the hallway, I heard the humming again. So I walked to the top of the staircase and looked down into the foyer. And I swear to you, without any hesitation, like it had intention, a little toy boat was gliding across the floor by itself. Not wobbling, not drifting, sliding like it was on a track. It went from one side of the foyer to the other and out of view. I just stood there, frozen. Then it came back the other direction. Same smooth motion, same hum. On the third pass, I took one step down, and the stair creaked under my foot. the boat stopped, like it heard me. It stopped dead in the middle of the entryway, right under the staircase, as if it had been caught. I made it halfway down before my mom suddenly leaned out from the hallway below, sharp and urgent, and said, "Stop! Don't come down!" I nearly fell through my own ribs. She scared me so badly I sat down right there, clinging to the banister. My parents came out together, went right to the boat, picked it up, flipped every switch, tried everything. Nothing. No hum, no movement, no power. And later, this is the part that makes my stomach drop even now, we realized the boat didn't start again because it didn't have batteries in it. At all. Empty compartment. The Visitor. Late summer, 1993. This one is harder to tell. It still makes me feel small. It was about a month after my 12th birthday, and we were in the middle of this awful heat wave. The house held heat like a trapped animal. That night, I brought a glass of water to my room and left it on my nightstand because I kept waking up thirsty. I don't know what time it was, but I woke up suddenly, wide awake, with this pressure on my legs. Like something heavy had settled across my shins. I blinked and looked down, but I couldn't see anything. And then that pressure started moving. Slowly. Crawling upward. It slid up my body, and then, in this terrifying, deliberate way, it pinned my wrists down beside my head, like hands holding me, but invisible. I tried to scream, like I really tried, but no sound came out. My mouth opened, my chest strained, and it was like the air refused to carry my voice. I fought, I thrashed, and whatever it was shook me, hard, against the mattress. Not like a dream, not like a twitch. Violent, controlled motion. For one panicked second, I thought, earthquake. I grew up in California, so that fear is wired in. But then I looked at the glass on my nightstand. The water was perfectly still. No ripple, no tremble, which meant it wasn't the room shaking. It was me. Somehow, pure adrenaline, pure survival, I broke free enough to finally get sound out. I screamed. And right after that, Owen screamed too. My parents came rushing, and all of us met in the hallway near the stairs. We could hear Owen crying from inside his room. When we got to him, he was sitting up in bed, shaking, sobbing so hard he couldn't breathe right. And what we pieced together, over that night and into the morning, was this. My scream had woken him up. He sat up, confused, and then he saw a dark figure rush past his doorway from the direction of my room. And as it moved through, it turned, just briefly, and he said it looked right at him. Then it went through his room and straight out through the wall, like the wall wasn't even there. That experience messed him up for weeks. He started stuttering afterward, just from the shock of it. And me. I couldn't stand sleeping alone. I slept in my brother's room for months after, squeezed into a bed with Jude, because the thought of whatever had been on me, I couldn't bear it. I still can't, honestly. The Shadow, 1995. By the time I was 14, I'd lived with enough weird that I wasn't as easily startled. But this night was pure primal fear. I woke up with that unmistakable feeling of being watched. You know what I mean? Like your body recognizes eyes on you before your mind catches up. I was lying on my side with the blanket pulled up, and I could feel something behind me, near my shoulder, and also this sense of presence at the foot of my bed. I wanted to roll over. I couldn't. It was like fear had glued me in place. After a few seconds, maybe longer, time does strange things in moments like that. I forced myself to sit up, and there it was. A shadowy figure standing about 3 feet from the foot of my bed. Not huge, roughly my height, maybe 5 foot something. Human-shaped, but not detailed. like darkness that had decided to take a person's outline. I stared at it, heart hammering, and something in me snapped, like I was tired of being hunted in my own room. So I yanked my feet back out of reach and I told it, out loud, to get the hell out of my room and never come back. And the craziest part? It listened. It didn't rush me. It didn't react with anger. It just sank. Like wax melting. Like ink soaking into paper. It faded straight down through the floor and vanished. And I sat there shaking, thinking, did that really just work? Her words were so clear, I can still hear them exactly. There's something black coming through the ceiling. And yeah, my parents' bedroom was directly beneath mine. So whatever had been standing at the foot of my bed wasn't just in my room. It was moving through the house like it belonged there. That farmhouse gave me a whole childhood full of moments like that. Those are just 3 that stayed sharp, but there were so many more. And I guess what I'm asking you, if you've made it this far, is, does that sound like ghosts to you? Or something else? And if you've lived through anything like this, please tell me. Even if it's just to say, yeah, I believe you. Because part of me still wants to know it was tied to that place, and that it can't reach out from the dark and find us again. Okay, so before I get into the main thing, I kind of need to give you a little context, just so you understand why this shook me as much as it did. I grew up with a lot of weird stuff around me. Like, a lot. And the house I've lived in for most of my life doesn't exactly help. It's this ancient, half-falling apart place, like I'm pretty sure it was the first house ever built in our little neighborhood. Before everything got developed, it used to be part of a dairy farm, and the newer houses were basically built around what used to be its land. The locals used to joke that our place was the haunted house. You know the kind. Creaky floors, rooms that always feel colder than they should, the whole vibe. And over the years, I've had things happen that I genuinely couldn't explain. Hearing my name when no one was home. Little objects not being where I left them. Electronics turning themselves on. That heavy, watched feeling. I even used to catch these shadowy shapes in the corner of my vision every few days, like they were familiar somehow. And there was a stretch of time when my mental health was really bad, and a close friend, his name was Jonah, passed away, and everything around that period felt even more intense. But eventually I talked myself out of it. I told myself it was grief, stress, my brain spiraling, the house settling, old wiring, anything. I basically decided, okay, you were in a dark place. You were seeing patterns that weren't real. And honestly, I got better. I'm in a much healthier place now than I was back then. I'm still open-minded about weird stuff. Afterlife, energies, whatever. But I'm not out here trying to convince myself everything is paranormal. Alright, so that's the background. Here's what actually happened. A couple weeks ago, I ordered this super cheap Ouija board. Not because I wanted to use it, more like aesthetics. I've got this dark, moody room theme going on, and it felt like the kind of creepy decor piece that would look cool on a shelf. It arrives, I unbox it, and I just leave it on my desk like, I'll deal with you tomorrow. Later that night, I'm sitting at the desk watching spooky videos, because apparently I don't value peaceful sleep. And one of those Ouija board clips pops up. And I don't know why I did this. Boredom, curiosity, stupidity, all of the above. I grab the board and I'm like, laughing at myself, like, okay, if there's a ghost here, say hi. The funniest part? It didn't even really come with a proper planchette. The little handpiece thing was this rough, cheap wood, like it was cut out with a butter knife. It didn't glide at all. You couldn't smoothly move it even if you tried. So I'm sitting there thinking, even if Ouija boards were real, there's no way anything could communicate through this busted piece of plywood. Still, I did the whole goodbye thing. I remember that clearly. Like, I didn't want to be reckless. I said goodbye, I ended it, and then I tossed the board up on the shelf above my bed, almost like a display. The handpiece went with it, sitting right on top like a little trophy. And that's where it gets hard to talk about. That night, I had a seizure. And I need you to understand, I have never had anything like that in my life. Not once. No history. Nothing even close. My eyes kept rolling back, like I was fighting to keep them forward, but losing. I could feel myself choking, like my tongue wasn't where it was supposed to be, like my throat wasn't cooperating. I kept slipping in and out of consciousness, and at the time I thought it was sleep, but looking back, it felt more like I was blacking out over and over. When it finally stopped, when I finally fully came back, I was just lying there buzzing. That's the only word for it. My whole body was humming like it had been electrocuted. I felt unbelievably weak, like my bones were made of wet paper. And there was this pressure on me, like something heavy was draped over my entire body, like one of those massive water-soaked blankets you can't push off. In the morning, the first thing I did, without even really thinking, was move the board. I took it off the shelf and put it away from the bed, and I separated the handpiece from it because I realized it had been resting right on the goodbye section of the board the whole night. I know that sounds small, but it bothered me so much I couldn't ignore it. Like it mattered. Like it was incorrect. I ended up going to the ER because obviously, what the hell? They ran tests. They checked everything they could, and they didn't find anything. No clear reason. No explanation they could point to with confidence. Just nothing. And I'm not saying I was possessed. I'm not saying some demon climbed into my spine because I bought a tacky decor board online. I'm not trying to make it that. But I can't shake the timing. I can't shake the feeling. Ever since then, my sleep has been awful. Not just I'm stressed awful, like my body doesn't trust the room anymore. And I keep catching myself staring at the shape of that shelf on the opposite side of the room, where the board used to be, like I'm waiting for something to move in the dark. I keep getting this same sensation I used to get when I was younger, that drowning, creeping, something is wrong feeling. The kind I convinced myself was just anxiety back then. And now there's this guilty feeling in my gut, like I messed up, like I opened something I didn't mean to open, even though, logically, I know how ridiculous that sounds. I don't even know what I want from telling you this. Maybe I just needed to say it out loud to someone who'll actually listen. Maybe it's a warning, like don't mess with things you don't take seriously, even as a joke. Or maybe it's just me being scared and trying to give that fear a shape. But I swear to you, ever since— Hey everyone, where are you tuning in from? Drop a comment and let me know. How was your day? I'm really excited to be here and share some mysterious experiences I've had from around the world. So don't forget to turn on notifications and subscribe to the channel so you can be the first to comment. Hey, okay. I want to tell this the way it actually feels in my memory, not the way it looks typed out on a screen. So first, my dad's side of the family has always had this quiet, unspoken thread running through it. Like certain people just know things. My grandma, for one, let's call her Grandma Ruth. She'd have these dreams that would come true later. Not every night, not like a party trick. Just enough that the adults would get this look and go, yeah, Ruth dreamed again. And then my cousin, Lena, she's the same way, maybe even stronger. She'll dream something specific, like a moment or a phone call or an accident, and then it happens. She also has that thing where she'll suddenly know something without being told, like the answer drops into her brain fully formed. And I'm not saying I'm on their level, but I've had my own little flashes. Hearing my name when no one said it. Knowing something's about to happen before it does. Small stuff, but enough that I never fully shrugged it off. Then recently, I found out about this relative nobody ever talked about. My great-great-aunt. I'm going to call her Aunt Marjorie, because honestly, it feels kinder than saying her real name. The only way she was described to me was basically, bad luck followed her everywhere. Like her whole life was one long run of things going wrong. I went and visited her grave not long ago, and what got me was her age. She didn't make it to old age. She was in her mid-50s, and it hit me like, wait, why didn't anyone ever mention her? And this is the part that still makes my stomach tighten. My grandma's older relatives, the women who were around when Aunt Marjorie passed, used to tell a story. They said that when she died, they saw something dark, like a shadow, like smoke, come out of her mouth. And then it sort of pulled back in, like it changed its mind. I don't have anyone left to ask about it. No one who saw it is alive now. So I'm just holding this strange little family story in my hands, trying to decide if it's folklore or trauma or something real. Okay, now here's where it gets personal. When I was a kid, early elementary age, my family moved into this little house and stayed there for a few years. It wasn't big. Everything was close together, like the house was holding its breath. And during that period of my life, things happened to me that I have never experienced in the same way since. I'd wake up at night in this half-awake, trance-like state and go straight to my parents' room, like I was pulled there. One night, I told them there was blood all over a poster in my room. I remember how sure I felt. Like, of course there's blood, can't you see it? They followed me back, turned on the light. Nothing. Clean poster. Normal room. No blood. And I remember standing there feeling confused, like reality had just swapped masks on me. Another time, I was in my bed just sobbing, repeating, I want to go home. I want to go home. And the weirdest part is, I was home. But I felt stranded, like I was in the wrong version of my life. My mom came in, and I can still see her face in my mind. Not scared, not concerned, just tired and irritated, like, what are you even talking about? And I couldn't explain it. I didn't have words big enough. The layout of the house is burned into my memory. The bathroom was at the top of the stairs. From the bathroom doorway, you could see down a short hallway that led to the bedrooms. And one day, I was sitting in the bathroom, just a kid, doing kid stuff, and I looked down that hallway, and I saw something I still can't shake. And I know what people will say. It was a dream. It was imagination. It was a kid being dramatic. But I remember it with the same clarity I remember the bathroom light and the hallway shadow, and where my own knees were when I sat there. It didn't feel like a dream. It felt like I was awake, and my house was doing something it shouldn't be able to do. There was also something about the bathroom tiles. The tiles had patterns, swirls and little shapes, not plain squares, and I would stare at them the way kids do, finding faces like you find animals in clouds. Except one face didn't stay still. It would shift, subtly but undeniably, like the expression was changing while I watched. And I know about optical illusions. I know about eyes playing tricks. But this was different. I checked it over and over because even as a little kid, I had this thought like, am I losing it? Imagine being 8 years old and doing reality checks because your bathroom floor won't behave. And then one day the faces in the tiles looked different, like the whole map of them changed, and that particular moving face never came back. I remember feeling almost relieved, and then weirdly empty, like I'd lost proof of something, even though I didn't want it. On top of all that, I used to smell nail polish at random times. Sharp, chemical, unmistakable, when there was absolutely no reason for it. No one painting nails, no open bottles, nothing. I even remember being at Grandma Ruth's house once and saying, "I smell nail polish," and she just brushed it off like, "You've got nail polish on the brain." Like it was funny, like it meant nothing. But it didn't feel like nothing. And here's the part I don't love admitting. Thinking about all of this recently made me panic. For months, I wondered if it meant something clinical, like schizophrenia, or some kind of psychotic disorder that had been simmering in me since childhood. I started talking to a psychiatrist for other stuff going on lately. Depression, hearing things sometimes. And these memories came back so sharply it was like someone opened a door in my head that had been sealed for years. So now I'm sitting with two possibilities that both scare me. One possibility is that my brain, even as a child, was misfiring in these specific ways. Visions, smells, sensations, and those were early signs of something. And the other possibility is that something about that house, or something tied to my family, was real. Real in the way that doesn't fit neatly into a medical chart. Real in the way Grandma Ruth and Lena would quietly understand without making a big show of it. And I don't know which is worse, honestly. I guess what I'm asking, if you're listening to me like a real person, is, what would you make of it? A frightened kid's brain trying to interpret shadows and patterns. A family sensitivity that shows up as dreams and knowing, and sometimes as terrifying imagery. Or something else entirely. Because I can handle unexplained. What I can't handle is not knowing whether I should be afraid of the world, or afraid of my own mind. So this was about 20 years back, and it still pops into my head every now and then, like it happened last summer. My uncle had this big stretch of land, something like 80 acres, split between woods and open fields. When my cousin Jesse and I were teenagers, that place was basically our whole world. We tore around on four-wheelers, cut little trails, built hangout spots everywhere we could get away with it. We knew the property so well, we could have walked it blindfolded. One year, we decided we wanted a real camp, like our own secret base. We picked this spot down in a shallow ravine near the edge of a soybean field, tucked right inside the tree line with a little creek nearby. No houses close, no road noise, just woods in that open field. It felt like the middle of nowhere. And we had a theme for each hideout, you know? This time, we were feeling ambitious, so we built these big stick teepees. We found 4 long, straight limbs for each one, stood them up like poles, tied them together at the top, then started weaving smaller sticks around them, snapping them to size and lashing them on. We even brought some of our stuff out there, random little toys and things to mess with when we got tired of building. We kept it all in plastic totes and shoved them into the corners of the unfinished teepees when it got late. The plan was to come back the next weekend and finish everything up. Except when we did come back the following weekend, it was wrong. Just wrong in a way I still can't fully explain. The teepees were completely taken apart, not smashed, not kicked over, disassembled. And all the sticks were stacked in neat, tidy piles, like somebody had taken their time and cared about doing it clean. But then there were a few sticks left out on the ground that didn't match the neat and tidy thing at all. They were arranged in a circle, and inside the circle was this big A-shaped symbol. The first thing it reminded me of was an anarchy symbol, like the kind you'd see on a notebook in school. But it didn't feel like some edgy kid doodle. It felt deliberate. And the totes? Gone. All our stuff, just missing. We told ourselves it had to be the neighbor kids, because a couple families nearby had permission to ride the trails on my uncle's land. We figured maybe they'd found our camp, thought it was funny, and decided to mess with us. I honestly can't even remember if we confronted anyone. We might have. We might have just shrugged it off and said, whatever, because we didn't have proof and we didn't want to look stupid. But here's the thing. None of that mattered after what happened later. A few weeks after that, we had one of those big summer get-togethers. Bonfire, family, food, the whole thing. The fire started getting low, and somebody said we needed more wood. And Jesse and I, being geniuses, were like, oh, we know a spot. There's a bunch of easy wood already cut and stacked. So we hooked a little trailer to the four-wheeler and headed out to that ravine. It was pitch black. The kind of dark where the trees feel taller and everything sounds closer. I don't remember the exact time, only that it was late enough that the party noise disappeared the deeper we went. We got to the spot and started loading. We weren't talking much, just working fast, like we wanted to get in and get out. And then, we both heard it. A woman's voice. Not screaming, not hysterical, clear and stern, like it had absolute authority. Leave here now! It wasn't right next to us, and it wasn't far away either. It was like it came from the air itself, like a whisper carried on the wind, except it was unmistakably words. A command. We ran. We didn't even finish loading. We just scrambled onto the four-wheeler and tore out of there like something was on our heels. The trailer was bouncing and fishtailing behind us, slamming into ruts, whipping side to side. I remember hearing it bang and scrape, and I remember thinking, I don't care, I don't care, I don't care, just go. By the time we got back, the trailer was basically wrecked. Of course, everyone asked where the wood was and what happened, and of course we told them, breathless, wide-eyed, talking over each other. And of course, nobody believed us. They laughed, or rolled their eyes, or told us we'd spooked ourselves in the dark. And maybe that would have been easier to accept if it was just me. But it wasn't. Jesse heard it too. We heard the same words, at the same time, in the same place. My cousin and I don't really talk anymore. Life happened, people drift, you know how it goes. But back when we still did, every once in a while one of us would say, hey, do you remember when? And we'd bring that night up, almost like we needed to check, again and again, that it had really happened and we hadn't imagined it. And I still think about that symbol sometimes, that big A inside the circle. I still wonder what it actually meant, who made it, and why. And I know one thing for sure. Whatever it was down in that ravine, it wanted us gone. So, my cousin Mia and I just did this quick little 2-night getaway down in the Florida Keys. Marathon, specifically. It was supposed to be an easy, sunny reset, you know? Ocean air, iced coffee, the whole thing. But the minute we walked into our room, something felt off. First thing, it was freezing in there. And not like, oh, the AC is blasting freezing, because it wasn't even turned down like that. The air just felt cold in a weird way, like the room had been holding on to it. We shrugged it off, dropped our bags, went out for the day, did our thing. And honestly, we didn't even talk about it again until later that night, when everything started getting stranger. We're getting ready to sleep, and there's this big mirror across the room, like way bigger than it needs to be. And while we're laying there, we start hearing this faint crackling sound coming from it. Not constant, more like little snaps and pops, like something shifting behind glass. Then the night turned into one of those nights where you don't sleep, you just keep waking up. Both of us were stirring on and off, and a few times I woke up with that intense feeling that I had to turn on the light, like I needed to see something immediately. So I'd click it on, sit up, scan the room, and there'd be nothing. Every single time. but the feeling didn't go away, like my body was reacting to something my eyes couldn't catch. At one point, we heard the door handle make that little flick sound, like someone pressed it down and let it snap back up. And it wasn't just once. It happened more than once, like someone was testing it. And then, this is the part I still can't explain. I heard what sounded like something getting tossed onto the floor. The closest thing I can compare it to is empty plastic bottles, like that hollow clatter-tumble sound. I sat straight up and turned the light on again, expecting to see a mess. Nothing. The floor was clear. When I laid back down, Mia was turned away from me, facing the other side, and I whispered, "Did you hear that?" And she answered me, like she was responding normally. But I couldn't understand her. It sounded like words, but muffled, distorted, like her voice was getting swallowed up before it reached me. I remember just freezing there and then. Honestly, I don't know why, I just stopped talking and tried to force myself back to sleep. Around 4:15 in the morning, this thunderstorm hit out of nowhere. And I'm not talking light rain. This was a full-on, shaking the windows kind of storm. It went on for hours, like it just parked itself over us. When we finally looked at the time later, it had lasted into late morning. That afternoon, we noticed a puddle of water inside the room, right near the balcony door. And of course, we assumed the storm had something to do with it. But we couldn't find where it came from. The door frame was dry. The ceiling above it looked fine. No dripping, no damp trail, nothing. Just a puddle, like somebody set it there. Then that night, we couldn't sleep again. We were doing that tired, quiet routine, washing our faces, turning things off, and when I switched on one of the lamps, the bulb started flickering so violently it looked like a strobe. It wasn't a gentle, "oh, the light's loose" flicker. It was aggressive. I turned it off immediately, and we just looked at each other like, "Okay, great." And then, after we left, Mia told me something she hadn't said the first night, probably because it freaked her out too much. She said that during the storm night, when she was half asleep, she had one hand tucked under the pillow next to her, and she felt movement, like someone climbing up onto the bed. And then she felt it, this slow, sinking weight onto the pillow beside her, like a head being placed there. Not a vague pressure. She described it like the actual shape, like the dip where a head would rest. And she panicked so hard she shoved the pillow off the bed. When she told me that, my stomach actually dropped, because it matched the whole vibe we'd been feeling, like something small, quiet, and close. After that, we did what everyone does now. We went down a rabbit hole, Googling everything we could, local stories, accidents, anything tied to the area. We kept coming back to the same gut feeling, that whatever it was, it felt like a kid. Not evil, just present, like it wanted to be noticed. We stayed at a hotel in Marathon. Nothing fancy, just a clean, normal place. And our room was on the second floor. Room 2318. And I know how this sounds. Believe me, I do. But it's one of those experiences where you can't really explain it away once you've lived through it. Because it wasn't just one weird thing. It was the stacking of it. The cold, the noises, the handle, the water that had no source, the light going wild, and that heavy, unmistakable feeling that we weren't alone in that room. So there's this one childhood memory I always hesitate to bring up, because if it were just me, I'd write it off as a kid's imagination running wild. But the problem is, it wasn't just me. There were 6 other cousins there, and even now, grown adults, we all still describe the same exact thing. We were spending a night out at my grandfather's place, his little farm out in the countryside. I don't remember our exact ages, but we were definitely still little. Like, no one was older than maybe 9 or 10. There were 7 of us total, 2 boys and 5 girls, all bouncing around like kids do when they're supposed to be winding down but aren't. The porch was the only place with decent light. One weak bulb over the door, that kind of warm little glow that makes you feel safe. And then beyond it, nothing. Just pure black. The yard, the path, the fields, everything disappeared the moment it left the porch light. We were sitting out there playing and talking and laughing when someone went quiet and pointed. Out in the darkness, straight ahead of us, were these patches. Big, neon green patches. Like 2 glowing shapes just hovering there, facing us. And I know how that sounds. I know. The farm had cats and dogs, and we'd seen their eyes at night before. Little reflective dots. You shine light and they shine back. But this wasn't that. These weren't small pinpoint reflections. They were larger, too large. And they weren't shaped like normal eyes either. No pupils, no iris, no eye structure at all. Just these solid, flat, greenish glows. Like someone had stuck 2 pieces of glowing glass in the air. The worst part was the feeling of it. They weren't just there. They felt focused. Like they were watching us the same way you watch someone when you're waiting for them to notice you. Of course we did what kids do. We got curious. One of the boys, Milo, ran inside and came back with my uncle's flashlight. He stood right at the edge of the porch light like he was brave, lifted the flashlight, and aimed it right at those glowing patches. And the second the beam hit them, gone. Just gone. Like someone snapped their fingers. All we could see in that spot were rocks and uneven ground. Nothing else. No animal, no person, no anything. So we're all talking over each other like, "Do it again, do it again." And Milo pulls the beam away. And the green patches instantly came back. Right there. Same spot, same height, same steady stare. He tested it again. Light on, disappears. Light off, returns. That's when the excitement stopped being fun and started curdling into that cold kind of fear kids get. The kind that makes your stomach drop even before you understand why. We ran inside to tell the adults, all of us tumbling into the room at once, trying to explain. But you know how it is. Family gathering, adults talking over tea, half listening. They barely looked up. Somebody waved a hand and said it was probably an animal, told us to stop spooking ourselves, and went right back to the conversation. So we trudged back out, annoyed and still curious and maybe a little embarrassed. And the glowing patches were still there, still facing us, still waiting. That's when Rowan, one of the boys, the stubborn one, did the thing we all begged him not to do. He crouched down, scooped up a handful of rocks from the porch edge, and chucked one toward the glow. It hit somewhere near them, at least we thought it did. And I swear, every single one of us felt it at the same moment. They moved closer. Not fast, not like a jump scare. Rowan laughed, nervous laughing, and threw another rock. Again, closer. A third rock, and now the distance felt wrong, like the darkness had shifted toward us, like something had leaned forward in response. We completely lost it. All 7 of us bolted inside, tripping over each other, slamming the door, breathless and wide-eyed, trying to talk at the same time. And here's the part I'm less confident about, because this part feels like it might have been fear taking over my brain. But I remember standing by a window later, peeking out toward the far hills, and thinking I saw more of them. More green glows scattered out in the darkness, like the countryside had more eyes than it should have. I can't swear to that part the way I can swear to the porch and the flashlight and the rocks, but it's stuck in my mind like a splinter. The next morning, in daylight, we went out there like tiny detectives, fully convinced we were going to solve it. Our most logical theory was something like, maybe it was glass, or a bottle, or some weird reflective mineral in the rocks that caught the porch light just right. We searched. We kicked stones around. We looked for anything shiny, anything reflective, anything that could explain it. There was nothing, just rocks. And what makes this so hard to shrug off, even now, is that the core details aren't just my foggy childhood recollection. My cousins still remember it too, independently, the same way. The big green glow, the way it vanished under the flashlight beam, the way it came back the second the light moved away, the way it seemed to creep closer when Rowan threw rocks. A couple weeks ago, it came up casually with my mom, just as a weird, remember that story? And she didn't even act surprised. She just shrugged and said that area has always had its own nighttime stories, like our family's private folklore, like strange things aren't uncommon out there after dark. And honestly, that's what keeps me thinking about it. Because if it was an illusion, how does an illusion behave like that? Why would it react to us? And if it wasn't an illusion, if it was something real, why did it feel like it wanted us to come off the porch and step into that blackness? All I know is this: it didn't feel like an animal. It felt like something was out there, watching a porch full of kids, waiting to see who would get brave enough or curious enough to walk into the dark. So, I'm going to tell you this like I'd tell a friend sitting across from me, because I honestly don't know how else to say it. Me and my husband Mason moved into this apartment a while back, early 2023, late winter. I work at a hospital nearby, mostly inpatient psych these days, but I did my time in the ER before that, which is part of why this has messed with my head so badly, because my first instinct is always to explain things. Stress, anxiety, sleep deprivation, some weird mental health spiral, anything that fits neatly into a diagnosis. But what happened here doesn't. Our living room faces this long hallway. It's plain, like someone forgot to finish designing it. No pictures, no windows, nothing. Just this empty stretch that ends in a corner, and our couch sits pointed straight at it, like we're always, constantly, watching the same dead end. At first, I thought it was just me. Little flickers in the corner of my eye, a sound I couldn't place. When I was a teenager, I used to get that all the time when my anxiety was out of control. Shadowy movement, weird peripheral stuff. So when it started happening again after we moved in, I told myself, okay, same old story. You're tired. You're adjusting. Except, it didn't stay small. Over a couple months, it escalated. The most consistent thing, this is the part I hate admitting out loud, was a woman. Pale, too thin, like her bones were doing all the talking. Hair long and stringy, hanging down like wet thread. She'd be in the hallway, just beyond the corner, like she was trying to hide but also making sure I knew she was there, completely still. And then she got clearer, like my brain stopped guessing and started seeing. Daytime, nighttime, didn't matter. I didn't tell Mason. I kept it to myself, because what am I supposed to say? Hey, I think there's a ghost lady in our hallway. I work in acute psych. I know how that sounds. But one night, early summer, June-ish, I was sitting on the couch and I saw her move. Not a blur, not a trick of light. She shifted, like she was stepping out. My stomach dropped so hard I felt it in my throat. I finally said it. I tried to make it casual, like a joke I didn't want to commit to. I think I'm exhausted, I told him, because I swear I just saw a woman in the hallway. And Mason didn't laugh. He didn't tease me. He just got up, took my hand, and walked me into the bedroom, shut the door behind us, like he was trying to put a wall between us and the hallway. Around that same time, other things started stacking up, smaller but constant. Doors that were closed would be open. Sometimes we'd find a door locked that neither of us remembered locking. Heavy footsteps that seemed to pace behind me when I walked from room to room. The kind of footsteps that sound like someone moving with purpose. Whispers, too. Soft, close, like somebody saying my name right behind my ear. I told myself it was the building. Pipes, neighbors, wind pressure, anything. And again, I still thought it was mostly me. Until one night in July 2023, everything snapped in half. Mason got home from work. I was cooking dinner. He went into the bathroom, and from the kitchen, I heard him saying my name over and over, like I was standing right outside the door. Then he said, "You don't have to knock, just come in." So I called back, confused, and he didn't answer. I walked to the bathroom, and he opened the door looking genuinely annoyed, like I'd been messing with him. He said, "Why were you knocking? Why were you calling my name?" I just stared at him. I wasn't. I tried to rationalize it. I even went back to the kitchen and made noise, tapped cabinets, knocked on the counter, like, maybe this sounds like knocking through the wall. He shook his head. No, it was knocking. And then he started crying, like fully broke down, sitting on the couch, hands over his face. When I asked what was wrong, he unlocked his phone and opened his notes app. And I swear to you, it was pages. Months of entries, dates, times, little descriptions, things he'd been seeing and hearing. He'd been keeping a log the whole time, quietly, like he was trying to prove to himself he wasn't losing it. And buried in those notes, again and again, was the same thing I hadn't dared say out loud. A frail woman in the hallway. He'd seen her from the day we moved in. He'd seen her alone. He'd seen her when I wasn't even home. He'd heard footsteps, whispers, and he wrote down something that turned my blood cold. That he'd heard my voice, my exact voice, calling him from the hallway while I was at work. "Come here. Come see." And then he wrote, the voice was coming from the corner. That was the moment we promised each other we'd stop hiding it. No more, maybe it's nothing. If something happened, we said it out loud, immediately. No secrets. Which makes what we did next feel especially stupid. That summer, we brought two things into this place that I still regret like a physical ache. First, we picked up this old framed photograph from a thrift shop. Not JFK this time, but some vintage political portrait, the kind that feels too serious for a living room. We both liked it in this weird way, like it was pulling our attention. We joked it was retro classy. We hung it up. Then in August, we visited Mason's aunt down south and came back with a childhood keepsake of his, an old wind-up jester doll. Big painted smile, tiny black eyes that never looked friendly. The kind of toy that people pretend is funny but really just makes everyone uncomfortable. His aunt called it Marcel. Marcel was supposed to play music when you wound him, but sometimes he'd make a few notes without anyone touching him. Mason's aunt laughed it off like it was a cute quirk. I called it superstition, but I'll be honest, in the back of my mind, I didn't like bringing that thing home. And here's the part I can't fully explain, even to myself. Right before we left, I got attached to the doll. Like irrationally protective. Like it mattered that we took it. I insisted on it, even though Mason was the one hesitating. We brought Marcel back. After that, the apartment felt busier. Like it had more moving parts. Doors clicking. The hallway feeling charged, like air before a storm. Marcel would be turned slightly on the windowsill when we'd swear we hadn't touched him. Not much. just enough to make you doubt yourself. And the woman still showed up sometimes. We stopped reacting because reacting felt like feeding it. We'd just keep talking, keep moving, pretend it wasn't there. Then came September 2nd, 2023. We came home late after being out. The apartment was completely dark. Mason locked the door behind me, and I stepped toward the living room to turn the lights on. And I saw something sitting in the hallway, right where the woman usually stood. It was Marcel, sitting upright, facing us, like someone placed him there, like he'd been waiting. I spun around and snapped at Mason, furious, like, "Are you seriously doing this to me?" He looked truly confused, which only made me angrier for half a second, until his face changed, until he saw it too. His expression went stiff and scared in a way I'll never forget. He started sobbing, like panicked, helpless sobbing. And I knew then, this wasn't a prank. This wasn't either of us, not the little cheerful wind-up tune. A harsh, ugly screech, like metal complaining, like something trying to warn me or punish me. I didn't even think. I ran outside, still holding it, and hurled it into the dumpster as hard as I could, like I could throw the whole problem away with it. We didn't sleep that night. 2 days later, we adopted a cat, just trying to bring something warm into the space, something normal. The first thing she did when we brought her inside? She padded straight to the end of the hallway, sat near the corner, and stared at the wall. Then she started meowing, low, upset, like she was talking to someone she didn't like. The very next day, Mason and I got into a car accident. Not fatal, thank God, but it left him sore and shaken for weeks, and his back's never been quite the same since. After that, things calmed down. Kind of. The apartment was never fine, but it wasn't as loud. We still heard footsteps, still heard whispers now and then. But the woman showed up less once the cat was here, like she didn't enjoy the audience. Months went by, and we tried to live like normal people again. Then, in January 2024, we finally took down that vintage portrait we'd bought. We'd been side-eyeing it for a while. It didn't fit the space, and honestly, it just made the room feel wrong. So we threw it out. The next day, Mason slipped on ice in the parking lot while he was out alone. Hit his head hard enough to get a concussion so severe the ER doctor told him, straight-faced, that if the angle had been even slightly different, it could have been catastrophic. And now, I'm sitting on the couch again. Same spot, same view down that hallway. The cat is beside me, tense, ears angled forward. And she's there. That pale, thin woman, half hidden beyond the corner, like she's playing the same patient game she's always played. Peek, wait, remind me. Mason's asleep in the bedroom, and I'm not waking him up. Not tonight. Because he doesn't need to know I still see her this often. He doesn't need to know that I'm staring straight down the hallway, and she hasn't blinked once. I'm going to tell you something that still feels a little unreal to say out loud, so just hang with me, okay? Not that long ago, my dad, Ray, passed away. He was in an assisted living place toward the end because we couldn't give him the kind of care he needed at home anymore. And I don't want to dress it up. It wrecked me. I was sad in this deep, heavy way that didn't turn off when the day ended. Even when I lay down at night, it felt like my mind was still holding its breath. And then the dreams started. The first one, I wasn't anywhere I'd ever been in real life. I was in Maui, of all places, some warm, bright shoreline like something out of a postcard. In the dream, I'm walking out of the ocean, water sliding off my arms, sand under my feet. And there's this little beach bungalow ahead of me, with the windows open like it's been waiting all day. And when I step inside, there he is. Dad. Ray. Wearing this soft teal button-up and light pants like he's on vacation, like he belongs there. He looks up at me like this is the most normal thing in the world and just goes, "Hey, kiddo." That's it. 2 words. But my whole chest felt like it cracked open in the best and worst way at the same time. Then I woke up. And even though the dream was strange, waking up felt stranger, because for a second I had that warm, simple certainty. I just saw him, and then reality came rushing back in like cold water. A while later, another dream. This time I'm in Michigan, in the middle of a brutal snowstorm. Wind screaming, snow so thick it looks like the world is being erased. I'm standing by this big, dark green SUV, not even a car he owned, which made it feel even more off. It's parked near this lonely little gas station, the kind with harsh fluorescent lights and a sign flickering like it's tired. I walk in, pushing through the cold, and there he is again, Dad at the counter like he's running an errand. And this is the weird part. He's buying 2 old VHS camcorders, the chunky kind that look like they belong in the late 80s. But the boxes are crisp and new, like they've just been manufactured. Like the past is being sold fresh off the shelf. I want to speak. I really do. I want to say, "Dad, what are you doing? Are you okay? Are you—" a million things. But before the words come out, I wake up again. After that, I tried to shrug it off. Grief does things to you, right? It shuffles memories around, makes time feel loose. So one afternoon, I took a nap, thinking maybe I'd just get a break from myself for a while. Nope. I'm in this unfamiliar house, totally different from mine. Mine is normal, late 80s suburban. This place feels older, like a 1970s split level with dim corners and that slightly musty, old carpet feeling you can't quite name. Twice I've dreamed about this house, and I still couldn't tell you the layout, like the dream only lets me access certain rooms. The first time, Dad and I are sitting on this huge couch, watching TV in the dark. The TV glow is the only light. He's calm, quiet, like we've been doing this forever. And when I glance to the side, I see what I think is a kitchen, just a partial view, like it's hiding from me. The second time in that same house is, honestly, it's almost funny how wrong it feels. Dad is throwing this big party, music, voices, people everywhere, like he's hosting some kind of celebration. But my dad was never that guy. He wasn't the big party type. It felt like someone had swapped the settings on him. Upstairs, on the 2nd floor, I bump into this woman, young-looking, glasses, sitting in a wheelchair. She introduces herself like she's an old friend of my dad's, like she's always been part of the story. But I don't think my dad had a friend like that. Not that I knew of. And the whole house, the party, the arcade basement, this stranger who's somehow familiar, felt like I'd stepped into a version of my life that took a left turn somewhere a long time ago. Then come the last 2 dreams. The finale dreams, I guess. I'm back in Hawaii again, but not the beach this time. It's Honolulu, and my whole family is there. My mom, Diane, and my 2 sisters, Kara and Lynn. All of us squeezed into this hotel room. Everything looks clean and modern, like a brand new resort. And I'm doing the dumbest, most normal thing, trying to figure out the TV remote. Pressing buttons, getting annoyed, laughing at myself a little. I'm about to turn and talk to Dad, because I can feel he's there, like I always can in these dreams. And then Mom walks in talking about the pool, all sun-kissed and chatty. She's going on about how warm it is and how much she misses being blonde. Which, what? My mom doesn't swim. She's never dyed her hair. And my sisters, in real life, are adults with their own lives. But in this dream, everything is slightly rewritten. Like the facts are close, but not quite snapped into the right place. And the very last dream? We're walking together, me and my sisters, while my parents are a little ahead and my Uncle Frank is with them, like this little group of adults planning something important. We're heading toward this circus-themed casino hotel in Las Vegas, and I swear to you, it looks like something out of a fever dream. The entrance is this giant clown head, mouth open, teeth like an archway. There are outdoor rides and flashing lights, and the whole place feels like it's trying too hard to be fun and failing into something creepy. And the wild part is, in the dream, they're talking like it's a business trip, like we're all headed there for some kind of venture, like it's normal to invest in a nightmare circus casino. But even with all that, despite how wrong the details felt, I wasn't scared. Because every time the dream shifted into something bizarre, the one thing that stayed steady was this: my dad was there. And I can't explain how comforting that was. It's like the world around him was off, like the set dressing didn't match the script. Old-fashioned things that looked new, places I've never been, versions of our lives that didn't line up. Even the way he showed up sometimes, driving vehicles he never drove, acting in ways he never really acted. Like the dream wasn't pulling from my memory so much as building something adjacent to it. And I keep thinking about that, how grief can do that, how your mind, aching for someone, might create a door, any door, just to let you see them again. So yeah, part of me wonders if it's just grief doing what grief does. Sorting, replaying, reimagining. My brain trying to stitch my dad back into the world because I'm not ready for him to be gone. But another part of me, quiet, embarrassed, but honest, wonders something else. What if those dreams weren't just dreams? What if, in some strange way, I was seeing a parallel version of us? A place where he's alive, where my family's history is slightly different, where the details don't match because they were never our details to begin with. I don't know. All I know is, I never woke up from those dreams feeling scared. I woke up feeling full and hollow, like someone handed me a warm letter and then took it back. Was my grief just giving me comfort? Or was I visiting someplace real, someplace strange, where my dad could still look at me and say, "Hey, kiddo." The house that raised me. So, my family's always been the we feel things kind of family. Not in a dramatic movie way. More like you walk into a room and you just know you're not alone, even when you're alone. And for years, I kept telling myself it was imagination, stress, old house noises, whatever made it easier to sleep. But I've had a handful of experiences that were hard to explain away, and I realized they all sort of cluster by location, like each place had its own chapter. So I'm starting with the first one, my childhood home. I'm in my early 30s now, and I'm actually telling you this while I'm back visiting the house during a long weekend. It's in New Jersey, and it's the kind of home that looks ordinary until you've lived inside it long enough to realize it has a personality. The place was originally built in the 1940s, one of those post-war neighborhood houses, cookie cutter from the outside, but full of history once families start layering their lives into it. My grandparents moved there after coming over from Europe, and later my mom and dad moved into a small second-floor apartment that had been added on. It wasn't fancy, but it was home. As far as we knew, nobody had died in that house before my grandfather. No dramatic tragedies, no rumors, nothing like that. And still, my younger brother Caleb and I had these weird shared experiences from the time we were little. The most consistent one was the stairs. It's hard to explain without sounding ridiculous, But any time either of us stood at the bottom of the steps leading up to the second floor, there was this instant feeling, like your body decided it was in danger before your brain caught up. Dread, cold prickling on your neck, and this heavy sense that something was right behind you. And then you'd run. Not walk, not hurry. You'd run up those stairs like you were being chased, and you wouldn't stop until you hit the landing and could slam the door behind you. Caleb and I used to tease each other about it like, "You're just being a baby." But the truth is, we both did it. Every single time. That was just the background hum, though. The really tangible stuff started later, after my parents split up and my dad moved out. The house changed after that. I don't know if it was the stress in the walls or what, but that's when things went from creepy feelings to, okay, what is happening here? Back then, Caleb and I shared a bedroom with these heavy wooden bunk beds. I had the top bunk, he had the bottom. And in the corner of the room, we had an old desktop computer, late 90s or early 2000s, one of those chunky ones that sounded like it was breathing when it powered on. Here's what started happening. Late at night, after Caleb was already asleep, I would hear the computer keyboard typing. Not little taps, not settling noises, actual typing, like someone was sitting there working. It happened so often that I almost got used to it. And honestly, I wasn't even terrified at first. I was annoyed. I'd lie there staring at the ceiling like, "Are you kidding me? I'm trying to sleep." And sometimes I'd whisper, quiet but firm, "Stop." And the typing would stop immediately, like it had been listening. The moment that really cracked things open, though, the moment that still makes my stomach twist when I think about it, was the bed. Caleb and I were playing with toy cars on the floor one afternoon, just normal kid stuff. And then, both of us, at the exact same time, noticed something in the wood grain of the bunk bed frame. A face. It lasted a few seconds, maybe less, but it was long enough for both of us to freeze, scream, and bolt out of the room like our lives depended on it. Later, we tried to find it again. We couldn't. We took flashlights and angled them every possible way, thinking maybe it was shadows, maybe it was a knot in the wood, maybe our eyes had tricked us. Nothing. Not even a pattern that could explain it. That was the day I begged my mom to let me move into a different room. This small den we weren't really using. She finally agreed, probably because I looked genuinely shaken. When I was switching rooms, I mentioned the nightly typing to Caleb, like it was just another weird thing the house did. He flat out didn't believe me. He was like, "How would I not hear that? I'm literally in the same room." Fair point, honestly. So I shrugged it off, moved my stuff, and Caleb took the top bunk. The very next morning, I woke up and found the computer out in the living room, on the floor, like it had been dragged. Caleb wouldn't even look at me at first. He just said, really quietly, "It typed last night." Apparently, the first night he slept up top, he finally heard it, clear as day, and that was it. He wanted the computer gone, not moved, gone. So we got rid of it, and that room never had another computer in it again. Around that same period, I started having this recurring nightmare, but only in that house, nowhere else. In the dream, there was a little girl, and she wasn't sad or lost or ghost story tragic. She was mean, like she enjoyed being cruel. She'd find me in the kitchen, laugh at me, this awful, delighted laugh, and then try to stab me in the stomach. And the worst part is, as the dreams kept happening, they started to shift. It became less about the attack and more about me trying to figure out who she was and why she was in my house, like I was being pulled into her orbit. I'd wake up panicked, sweating, heart racing, with this heavy certainty that the nightmare wasn't just a nightmare, that it was tied to the stairs, and the typing, and that face in the wood. But it made no sense. Who could it be? Nobody died there. Eventually, Caleb got older and went through this phase where he was reading about spiritual cleansing, incense, salt, certain prayers, that kind of thing. I don't even remember everything he did, but he was serious about it. He did some kind of cleansing of the house, his version of it anyway. And after that, the worst of it stopped. Years later, way later, after I'd moved out and was living my own life, I learned something I hadn't known as a kid. My mom told me, in one of those quiet, heavy conversations, that she'd had a miscarriage when I was small. She'd been pregnant with a baby girl, and I remember just sitting there, feeling cold, because my mind immediately went back to the dream girl, the laughter, the jealousy I always felt radiating off her in the nightmare. I can't prove anything, and I'm not saying that's what it was, but part of me still wonders if something in that house carried her, if she felt like she belonged there too, and resented that Caleb and I got to stay. Now, the second presence in that house was completely different. My grandfather, Johann, lived downstairs with my grandmother. He was a gentleman when I was young, but he got sick later, and he eventually passed away in the house after a long, brutal battle with Alzheimer's. I was a teenager when it happened, and after that my grandmother was alone on the first floor. Except when my grandmother traveled. Every few years, she'd go visit her sisters overseas, and she'd be gone for a month or two at a time. And during those trips, only during those trips, the house would get loud. It was almost like my grandfather didn't understand she was gone, like he was searching. When Caleb and I were kids, we took piano lessons from this instructor named Frank who would come to the house. One afternoon, my grandmother was away, and I had to stay late after school for some stupid project. I told Caleb to just take a longer lesson, and I'd catch up later. When I got home, I walked in and immediately knew something was off. Frank and Caleb were both pale, like drained. They asked me, "Did you just get in right now?" I said yes, obviously, and they just stared at each other. During the lesson, they'd both heard a man's voice in another room, not muffled, not "maybe the TV is on," a real voice speaking. Then footsteps, then a door opening and closing. They'd assumed it was me coming home early, but they were alone. Frank was shaken in a way adults usually try not to be in front of kids. Like he didn't want to make it worse, but he couldn't pretend it was nothing. Then there was another incident when I was around 19. I was home alone, and for once I had the place to myself. No one to complain, no one to tell me to turn it down. So I started playing guitar really loud. Singing too, just messing around like an idiot, enjoying the freedom. And in the middle of it, I heard my grandfather's voice, his actual voice, German accent and all, shout my name the way he used to when we were kids and he'd catch us doing something we weren't supposed to. Not a whisper, not a creak, a sharp, angry shout. I froze, and then I did the most mature thing possible. I ran out of the house and drove away, barefoot. No shoes, no thinking, just pure instinct like my body took over. I didn't come back until my mom got home from work. It's almost funny now, if I let myself laugh about it. Like even after death, he was still telling me to keep it down. But in the moment, it didn't feel funny. It felt like the house had turned and looked straight at me. And those were the big, unforgettable moments. But sprinkled through all of it were the smaller things that happened so often they started to feel normal. The piano playing when nobody touched it. Footsteps in rooms you knew were empty. Voices drifting down the hallway. Objects disappearing and then turning up in the most obvious place like they'd been put there on purpose. That house had layers, and living there felt like sharing space with memories that weren't always mine. And honestly, that was just the beginning. The one apartment I still won't drive past. So, I've had a lot of weird experiences over the years, but my dad's very first apartment after my parents split up? That place is the only one I won't even pass on the road anymore. My parents divorced when I was about 6. Dad moved into this small apartment on the edge of town, and not long after, his girlfriend at the time, Marissa, moved in too. Custody was shared, but I mostly lived with my mom and went to Dad's every other weekend. And I swear to you, the strange stuff started immediately. Like, day 1. We were moving boxes into the master bedroom. I carried one into the walk-in closet, set it down, and when I slid it into place, my stomach just dropped. Underneath where the box had been, there was a handprint on the carpet. But it wasn't a dent, not a stain, not something spilled. I didn't even know what to say. I just stared, and I remember my dad going quiet, in that way adults do when they're trying not to freak a kid out. Later that same day, we realized the shower didn't have a curtain. Dad measured the shower rod. He was standing right there with the tape measure, and we went out to grab a new one. We came back, and the rod was gone. Just not there. Dad and I both stood in the bathroom looking at each other like, "Are you messing with me?" We decided we must have misremembered because it seemed too ridiculous to argue with reality. We didn't feel like going back out, so we left it for the morning. Except when we woke up the next day, the rod was back. And not only was it back, there was a shower curtain on it. Neither of us bought a curtain. Neither of us put it up. And I can't explain the feeling of standing there, half awake, staring at a perfectly normal bathroom that suddenly looked like it had been fixed by something that didn't want us noticing what it could do. That bathroom became the center of everything. If you were brushing your teeth, you'd catch movement in the mirror, someone slipping behind you like they were trying to squeeze past. You'd whip around, heart jumping, and the apartment would be silent. Everyone else still asleep. No footsteps, no doors. The light in the bathroom would click on by itself, then off, then on again, like it was playing with your nerves, like it knew exactly when you were about to convince yourself you imagined it. The closet light did the same thing. Doors would slam on their own. Not gently close, slam. Sudden, angry, final. And then there was the voice. Sometimes from that bathroom area, you'd hear a man speaking in a language I didn't recognize. Something that sounded like Hindi, or close to it. Low and fast, like someone talking to someone else in the next room. Except there was never anyone there. And the tone of it wasn't friendly. It felt like overhearing an argument you weren't supposed to hear. It gave the whole place this constant, sour tension. Like you could never fully relax, even watching TV on the couch, because somewhere in your body, you were braced for the next thing. One morning, Marissa had a friend staying over. Her name was Denise, and she was making breakfast while I sat at the kitchen table talking to her. It was so normal for a second. The clink of plates, the smell of toast, just regular life. And then, out of nowhere, the cabinet door snapped open and a blender launched out like it had been thrown. I'm not exaggerating. It didn't fall. It didn't tip out. It shot across the kitchen. It missed Denise by a fraction, like inches, and smashed into the stove hood. Glass exploded. The sound was so sharp, it felt like it hit my bones. Bits of broken glass landed in the food and ruined everything. But honestly, nobody cared about breakfast anymore. Denise was pale, shaking, staring at the cabinet like she expected something to come flying out next. This was back when people used answering machines with tapes. I'd call my dad and leave messages, and those tapes, if he still has them, would be creepy evidence all by themselves. You'd hear a normal message, "Hi Dad, it's me, call me back." And then there'd be the unmistakable click of someone picking up the phone on his end. And whoever was leaving the message would stop mid-sentence and go, "Hello? Dad? Someone there?" Over and over, on different tapes, different people. Same click, same confused pause. Christmas was what finally made it feel personal. My family is big on Christmas. Our ornaments weren't store-bought decorations. They were memories. Stuff from my grandparents, things we'd made as kids, pieces we only brought out once a year. By then, the weirdness had gotten bad enough that Dad actually anchored the tree to the wall. Literally. A chain screwed into studs because he was worried something might knock it over. We went out to dinner one night, just the three of us, and when we came back, the tree was destroyed. Not just tipped, not bumped, destroyed. It had been ripped so hard the chain had torn out of the wall, leaving ugly holes in the drywall. The tree was on the floor like it had been slammed down, and every ornament, every single one, was shattered. Even the ones that should have survived. The wooden ones, the metal ones. Everything broken like someone had gone out of their way to make sure nothing was salvageable. I can still see Marissa standing there with her hands over her mouth, making this small sound like she was trying not to cry. And my dad. My dad looked furious in a way I'd never seen, but it wasn't the kind of anger you can direct at something, because what do you even yell at? Air? Eventually, Dad moved us out. He bought a small house across town, and I remember feeling like I could breathe again the moment we left that apartment behind. On the final walkthrough, the landlords came to collect the keys, a quiet couple, originally from India. My dad, trying to make sense of it, asked them straight out if anyone had died there. Like, suicide, something violent, anything. The wife opened her mouth like she was about to answer, and the husband snapped something at her in their language, sharp, stern. She immediately changed her expression and just said, "No." But the way they reacted, it wasn't normal. It felt like stepping on a hidden wire. And then, as we were driving away, my dad decided to take one last picture of the building from the parking lot. Just a simple, good riddance kind of snapshot. Like he wanted proof it was real and we were leaving it behind. When the film got developed, the building looked normal. Except where our apartment should have been, there was this intense blue glow coming from the balcony. Bright, electric, unnatural, like a light that didn't belong in the world. It washed out most of what should have been visible, like the apartment itself was being erased behind it. To this day, if my GPS tries to route me anywhere near that complex, I take a different road. I don't care if it adds 10 minutes, because somewhere in the back of my mind is this stubborn, irrational fear that if I get too close, whatever was there might recognize me. And I know how that sounds. I do. But that dread is real, and it's the only place I've ever been that I refuse to return to, because it didn't just feel haunted. It felt like something in there noticed us and didn't want us there. The bathroom wall knocker. So, let me set the scene for you. This was early in my teaching career, back when I was the music teacher at a small private school in New Jersey. I loved field trips. I was that person who always volunteered, always signed the forms, always ended up carrying someone's extra sweatshirt and a backpack full of snacks. My last year doing this trip, they put me in a cabin I'd never stayed in before. It was shaped almost like a little square. 4 bedrooms arranged around the building, each one with its own bathroom and its own door that opened onto this wraparound porch. And there was one odd feature. My room connected to another bedroom through this old, heavy interior door with a big iron slide bolt, like something out of a century-old boarding house. The cabin itself felt ancient, but weirdly, my room felt calm, empty, in a good way, like the air was clean and quiet. First night, everything went fine. I had 2 boys in the cabin who were known for being, let's call them creative with rules, but I didn't hear a peep. The next morning, though, when I went around waking everyone up, the boys in the room connected to mine were furious. They said they barely slept because the room next to them kept banging on the bathroom wall all night. Thump, 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 like somebody was trying to punch through. And guess which room that was? So I marched right over to my usual suspects and gave them the teacher version of "knock it off." They looked genuinely offended and swore they didn't do it. But the other kids were so upset, and the story sounded so believable that I didn't buy the Innocence Act. I figured they were lying because they got caught. Fast forward to that evening. The kids went out on a long hike with the camp staff, one of those 5-hour up-a-mountain treks. The chaperones got a little break. The science teacher, Mr. Caldwell, and the guidance counselor, Ms. Rowan, went to the main lodge to watch a movie. Me? I was exhausted. I decided to head back to my cabin for a nap. It was about a quarter mile through the trees, just far enough that the lodge noise fades and you start hearing your own footsteps. When I got to the cabin porch, I heard an alarm clock going off inside. Not in my room, the room next to mine, the one connected by the heavy door, the room where the kids complained they couldn't sleep. I remember thinking, great, no nap for me. So I opened the outside door to that bedroom, stepping inside to shut off the alarm. And the second I crossed the threshold, the alarm stopped on its own. Not like I hit a button, it just stopped. And right behind that silence, this feeling hit me. Like walking into a room where an argument happened 5 seconds ago, and everyone's pretending they're fine. The air was heavier. The light felt dimmer, even though the curtains were the same as mine. And it was colder, noticeably colder. These rooms didn't have separate thermostats. The whole cabin was controlled together, so the temperature difference made no sense. I didn't stay. I shut the door and walked back around the porch to my room, grateful to be back in that calmer space. I started getting ready for my nap, kicked off my shoes, unbuttoned my jeans, and then, right before I climbed into bed, I thought, you know what? I should use the bathroom first. I go into my bathroom, and as I'm about to sit down, this big black spider crawls right over the toilet seat and disappears under the rim. I jump back like the toilet just spoke to me. I flipped the seat up instantly, ready to smash it, but the spider was gone. Just gone. No scuttling, no web, no sign of it anywhere. And I'm sorry, but I'm not going to sit down and just hope a huge spider doesn't reappear mid-situation. So I thought, fine, I'll use the other bathroom. That heavy old door, it always stuck a little. To slide the bolt, you had to lean your weight into it to get the metal to line up. I did that. The bolt scraped open. The door creaked. And I stepped back into that other bedroom, the dark, cold one. Even the smell felt different, like damp wood and old fabric, the kind of scent you get in a basement you don't like. I went straight into its bathroom, sat down on the toilet, and the second I did, there was a loud banging on the wall behind me. Thump, thump, thump. My first reaction was pure anger. I actually started forming the sentence in my head, "Are you kidding me?" Because I thought the boys were back and messing around again. And then my brain caught up with reality. They weren't back. They were still out on that mountain. 5-hour hike, camp staff, no phones. No chance they'd slipped away and sprinted back to prank their teacher. I was alone. The banging kept going. So I did what I always do when something scares me. I tried to explain it away. Okay, I told myself. Maybe the pipes shift when you sit down. Maybe the wall is loose. Maybe it's just plumbing being weird. I started shifting my weight, wiggling a little, moving my feet, testing the floor. The banging didn't match anything I did. It wasn't reactive. It wasn't random either. It was deliberate. And in a rush, all the pieces clicked together. The kids hearing banging at night, the alarm luring me in, that spider sending me out of my own bathroom, the cold, the dim light. The oppressive feeling in this room. Whatever was here wanted me in this bathroom, in this exact spot. And I'm telling you right now, I didn't even finish what I came there to do. I bolted. I ran out of that bathroom, through the dark bedroom, through the heavy connecting door into my room, like my life depended on it. And I slammed the door behind me and reached for the slide bolt. But to lock it, you have to press your whole body into the door so the metal lines up. So I threw my weight against it, full shoulder, full body, and something on the other side shoved back. Hard. Hard enough that I got knocked backward. I wasn't tiny either. At the time, I was about 5'10", maybe 245 pounds. Solid. The kind of weight that does not get casually moved by an old door settling in its frame. My shoulder lit up with pain. I stumbled back, heart exploding in my chest, and I don't even remember breathing. I just remember slamming myself forward again, forcing the door shut, and finally getting the bolt to slide into place. Then I grabbed my jeans and shoes off the floor, didn't bother being dignified about it, and sprinted out onto the porch. I got dressed like a frantic cartoon character, one leg at a time, hopping, fumbling, and I ran all the way back to the lodge. When I got there, Mr. Caldwell and Miss Rowan were still watching their movie. I was out of breath, sweaty, half panicked, and I just blurted it all out. Miss Rowan gave me that tight smile people give when they're humoring you. But Mr. Caldwell, bless him, he got this serious look and went, "No, I believe you." We stayed together until the kids got back. Then we did the closing program, and I led my group back down the trail to the cabin like everything was normal. I didn't tell the kids what happened, obviously, but I did pull aside the two boys I'd blamed earlier and said, "Hey, I owe you an apology. I know it wasn't you." They stared at me like I'd just announced the sky was green. That night, once I had everyone settled, I went into my room and tried to convince myself I was safe, that whatever was in that cabin was confined to the other room, the dark one, the cold one. But I didn't want to be alone with my thoughts, so I called my partner, Elise, just to hear a normal voice. I told her the story, trying to make it sound casual, but she lost it. She laughed so hard she was wheezing. She kept picturing me sprinting away from a ghost with my pants half on, terrified and furious at the universe. And honestly, her laughter got me laughing too. It helped. It made the fear feel smaller. But then, I swear to you, while I'm still on the phone, I glance over at this old wooden wardrobe in my room. It had two doors. They were closed. And right in front of my eyes, both doors flew open. Bang! Not a gentle creak, not a slow swing, like somebody yanked them open and slammed them against the frame. I froze so completely I stopped breathing. Elise was still talking, still laughing, asking me what was wrong. And all I could do was stare at that empty wardrobe. I hadn't put a single thing in it all weekend. Nothing could have fallen forward. Nothing could have pushed those doors open from inside. The room went dead still. I didn't sleep much after that. I left every light on, laid there stiff under the covers, and kept my eyes on that wardrobe until morning, trying not to think about what might have been listening the whole time, waiting for me to say its name out loud. So, I've been doing musical theater for a long time now. Long enough that I've learned something kind of funny. Theaters don't just collect dust and old playbills. They collect stories. And sometimes, whether you believe in it or not, they collect something else too. Every theater I've worked in has had its little rituals. One of my favorites is the ghost light. You know the one. Single bulb on a stand, left glowing center stage after everyone goes home. Officially, it's for safety. Unofficially, people will tell you it's so whatever's lingering in the building doesn't feel shut out in the dark. There are two places that still stick to me, even after all these years. The first one is a summer theater I've bounced back to on and off for about a decade. Back when I first worked there, I was sharing company housing, so my boyfriend at the time, Eli, and I would sneak into the balcony when we wanted a little privacy. Nothing dramatic, just young, dumb, and convinced we were being very stealthy. One night we're climbing up the stairs, trying not to laugh too loud, and we both see this woman ahead of us, just for a second, turning the corner at the top landing. She's in this floaty lace dress that looks like it wandered out of an old photograph, like late 70s, maybe early 80s. The fabric catches what little light there is, and she moves so naturally that my first thought isn't ghost. My first thought is, oh no, someone's already up here. We speed up, annoyed and a little embarrassed, and when we reach that corner, there's nobody. Not hiding, not ducked into a row, not slipping down the stairs. Nobody. The balcony is empty. The whole theater is empty. Quiet in that way empty buildings get, where your own breathing sounds too loud. Eli and I just looked at each other, and without even talking about it, we turned around and left. Mood immediately gone. Later that same summer, please don't judge me too harshly, we found another private place. This little tech storage room tucked away off a hallway. It was basically a graveyard of broken equipment. Old cables, cracked cases, dead gear nobody had the heart to throw away. And sitting on a shelf was this massive poster printer, the kind that spits out those giant lobby banners. Everyone knew it didn't work. People joked about it. It had been broken since before I ever stepped foot in that building, and I'm not exaggerating when I say it wasn't even plugged in. No cord in the wall. Nothing. So there we are at like 2 a.m, and the building is locked up and still, and absolutely no one is supposed to be there. And that printer suddenly roars to life. Not a little click, not a flicker. I mean, it whirs up like it's been waiting for an audience. Lights on the panel, mechanisms grinding. And then, God, I still get chills. It starts printing. Paper feeding through like it's got a job to do. Eli froze. I froze. And then we both just ran. Like full panic, half-dressed, trying to pull on shoes while sprinting down the hallway. We didn't stop until we were outside, the night air hitting our faces, both of us laughing in that shaky, disbelieving way where you're laughing because the alternative is screaming. After that, things stayed quiet for years. I'd still get that little prickle walking through the balcony, but nothing like that. And then, this is the part that makes me pause even now. Something happened again, recently, on an ordinary day. I was down in the orchestra pit with my assistant, Marin. Just the two of us. 2 keyboards, maybe a couple yards apart. No music playing, no talking. That soft, swallowed silence pits have. Marin and I snapped our heads to the exact same spot at the exact same time. Nothing there. She stared at me and goes, "Okay, you heard that too, right?" And I didn't even know what to say, because my brain immediately did that thing where it tries to connect dots. The balcony, the lace dress, the feeling of being watched without menace, and then this voice, like someone just checking in, like she remembered the place, or remembered me. But the theater that truly, undeniably tops the list for me, the one that still feels like it has fingerprints on my memory, was the first theater I ever worked at. I was 17, fresh out of high school energy, and I landed this job as a music director in a tiny performance space that used to be a church. Like, actually a church. Built in the 1800s. It had that old wood smell and stained glass that made the daylight look like it was filtered through honey. It stopped being a church sometime in the early 1900s, sat empty for years, and then eventually got patched up and reborn as a theater. Next door, there was this crumbling old rectory they turned into props and costume storage. I hated that building. Like, truly hated it. Not creepy, spooky fun. I mean, my whole body said no the second I looked at it. To make it worse, these huge birds, black, heavy, prehistoric looking, would perch on the roof like statues. I don't even know what they were exactly, but I called them vultures because that's what they felt like. I refused to go in there. Full stop. The theater itself, though, that place was alive in a way I still can't explain. They gave me a key and told me it was my job to come in and open up before rehearsals, which, looking back, is wild. I was a teenager. I thought that's just what music directors did. Like, sure, why not? Hand the kid the keys to the haunted building. To turn on the lights, you had to walk through the entire place in darkness with a flashlight, climb this narrow ladder into a little electrical closet, and flip this big, old-school lever switch. It was so dramatic it felt like something out of a cartoon. Like I should have been wearing a lab coat and yelling, "It's alive!" And every single time, I'd be walking through the dark and I'd hear things. Footsteps in another hallway. A door creaking open and then clicking shut. Voices, muffled, like people talking in the lobby. More than once I'd call out, thinking the cast had arrived early. No answer. And when I finally flipped the switch, climbed down, and looked around, I'd be completely alone. It got to where I'd almost speedrun it, you know? Like if I moved fast enough, I wouldn't have to acknowledge what was happening. But the moment I can't shake, the moment that feels like it was stamped onto me, was after a late show one weekend. My friend Theo and I were on stage, wrapping cables, putting away instruments, cleaning up. We were both young and exhausted and weirdly emotional in that post-show way. And we started talking, really talking, about the future. The kind of conversation you only have when you're that age, when everything feels possible and you're both terrified and thrilled by it. And while we're talking, a woman walks toward us from the shadows. She's wearing this old-fashioned bonnet, not like a costume bonnet from a prop closet, like it belonged to her. She's watching us with this gentle focus, like she's listening to every word, like it matters. She looks solid, real, present. Theo and I both glanced at her, and in the same instant, we made the same assumption. Someone's still in costume. Maybe an actor. Maybe crew. Not walking away, not behind a curtain, just gone. We went sheet white. Theo swallowed hard and said, "Okay, on 3, say what you just saw. 1, 2, 3, and we both blurted at the exact same time, "A woman in a bonnet." We didn't finish cleaning up quickly after that. We finished cleaning up immediately. But here's the thing. That conversation, the one she listened to, was real. It was hopeful and raw and full of these big promises we were making to ourselves. It shaped me. It lit something in me that I carried forward, even when things got hard. And years later, when I think back on it, I always wonder, was she just a leftover echo in an old building? Or was she something kinder than that? Something that showed up just to witness 2 kids dreaming out loud. I like to think she heard us. And I like to think, wherever she is, she knows we actually did it. We became the people we said we wanted to be. Hey, so about 8 weeks ago, something happened to me that still sits in the back of my head, like a song you can't turn off. Let me rewind. When I was in 6th grade, I used to hang around a group of friends who had older friends, like high school older. There was this one guy everyone knew, and he had this weird nickname that made him sound cooler than he actually was. I'm going to change his name here. Let's call him Dario. Dario was the kind of guy who moved like trouble. Not loud trouble, more like you could tell he had stories you didn't want to be part of. But around me and my friends, he acted friendly enough, smiled sometimes, joked, like he was harmless. Until he wasn't. One day he stole my phone. It wasn't even a good phone. Honestly, it was barely functioning, and I'd gotten it in a dumb way anyway, so it's not like I was carrying some priceless treasure. But still, he took it from me like it was nothing. And I did nothing. I was, 12? Skinny, short, still in that awkward kid body. He was 17 and built like someone who'd already learned how to look dangerous on purpose. And it wasn't just him, it was the whole vibe around him. The kind of family people whispered about. The kind of guy you don't confront, because you don't know what comes next if you do. So I swallowed it. I walked away feeling small, embarrassed, like I'd handed over my own dignity with the phone. And yeah, part of me still thinks, man, I was such an idiot for not saying anything. But those years were complicated. It wasn't as simple as, stand up for yourself. Not back then. Anyway, time moved on. He graduated. I'd see him once in a while around the streets, just passing by, nothing major. Then I moved away. The years stacked up, and he became one of those people who turns into a blurry memory. Like a character you haven't thought about in forever. Until recently. A couple months ago, I ended up back in the old neighborhood for a while. Not to reconnect with anyone. Actually, I don't talk to anybody from that time anymore. Just neighbors, basic hellos, that kind of life. And one afternoon, I'm walking home, mind on autopilot, and I see someone coming toward me. And it's him. Or, it's Dario. Same face, same eyes, same way of holding his shoulders. It wasn't like I had to convince myself. It hit me instantly. We made eye contact, that quick flash where two people recognize each other without saying a word. But here's the part that shocked even me. I didn't feel anything. No anger, no fear, no urge to prove something. I just kept walking like he was a stranger who happened to have a familiar face. And he kept going too. No words, no pause. Just that split-second acknowledgement. And then the street swallowed it. I went home and didn't even bring it up to anyone, because honestly, it didn't feel like a thing. Just an old ghost of a memory crossing the sidewalk. Then, maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, Facebook recommends a profile to me. And you know how that goes. You're not looking for anyone, but curiosity is annoying like that. So I click. It's Dario's profile. And the first thing I notice is that people are posting the kind of messages you only post when someone's gone. You know, rest easy, miss you forever, fly high, all that. The page was locked down, so I couldn't see much, but the comment section was full of cousins, friends, family, talking to him like he could still read it. And I'm sitting there staring at my screen like, wait, what? Because according to that page, he's dead. So I scroll more, and I realize something that makes my stomach drop. A lot of those posts aren't recent. They're older than the day I saw him. Like, the timeline doesn't match. That's when I start digging. I remembered a connection. An old friend of mine has a sister, and that sister is dating someone who used to be really close with Dario. So I message my friend like, hey, random question. Do you know what happened to Dario? My friend replies, super casual, like it's common knowledge. He died. I ask how long ago, and my friend says, more than half a year ago. Something with his lungs, some kind of complication. Natural causes. Not an accident, not violence, just his body failing him. I read that message like 3 times. Then I type back, that's impossible. I saw him a month and a half ago. And she's like, no you didn't. He's been gone longer than that. So now I'm just sitting there, frozen, because I know what I saw. And I'm not someone who lives in ghost stories. I'm not the energy and spirits type. I'm the type who doubts everything. But I also know my own brain, and I'm telling you, I remember faces like they get printed into me. And that was him. So if he'd been dead for months, who did I see? Was it someone who looked exactly like him? Like, truly identical? Was my mind playing some sick trick, pulling an old face into a random stranger's body for a second? Or was it something I don't have a neat explanation for? That's what messes with me most. Not fear, not even guilt, just the glitch of it. The math not adding up. And yeah, I'll say this. Whatever he did to me as a kid, I don't wish anything on his family. If he's gone, then I hope the people who loved him find peace. I'm not carrying a revenge fantasy. Life already did what it did. But I can't lie to you. Sometimes I replay that moment on the sidewalk. The eye contact, the certainty. And I just think, what was that? Because either the world is way weirder than I give it credit for, or my brain can create a perfect illusion when it wants to. And I don't know which one scares me more.